Chapter 2642. Yi Qing Luo pulled on it. Miao Rongrong's body started to tremble. It was so painful that she couldn't help but draw in a breath of cold air. But the fear towards Yi Qing Luo made her not dare to struggle. After a while, that slender black thread was completely pulled out from Miao Rongrong's eyes. Yi Qing Luo gestured. It was about half the length of her arm. When the black thread was completely pulled out, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Yi Qing Luo also confirmed that this black thread really had its own consciousness. Because the moment Yi Qing Luo just pulled out the black thread, that slender black thread swiftly wrapped around Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Immediately, it headed towards Yi Qing Luo's eyes. But before the black thread entered Yi Qing Luo's eyes, it was pressed down by Yi Qing Luo's fingernails. TSK. Yi Qing Luo let go of Miao Rongrong's hair and with a casual flick, her fingers swiftly wrapped the black thread around her hand. Miao Rongrong fell onto the ground and raised her head. From this angle, she could see clearly the black thread in Yi Qing Luo's hand. She recalled what Yi Qing Luo did to her eyes earlier and her body stiffened as she asked in a trembling voice, "This? What is this thing? Becoming someone else's puppet and you still don't know, to think you're the eldest miss of the Miao tribe." Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly as she shot a disdainful glance at her. Miao Rongrong's face turned pale as she leaned against the wall weakly, gasping for air. "This thing, who put it on you? Is Miao Yixiong also controlled by this thing?" As Yi Qing Luo was asking, she pretended to use her little finger to smear a layer of something on that black thin thread. Miao Rongrong shrunk back as she lowered her head. "I don't know." "You don't know again." Yi Qing Luo laughed. "If I ask you, you don't know anything, what's the use of keeping you alive?" Miao Rongrong immediately raised her head as she looked at Yi Qing Luo in fear. "This thing, I really don't know. My father he will not be controlled." "You're so certain that your father isn't being controlled, yet you say you don't know the source of this thing?" Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Miao Rongrong realized that her answer had fallen into Yi Qing Luo's trap as she clenched her teeth. "I really don't know, that person. I've never seen his face before. I can only confirm that he's a man and his age isn't old. Men, young age." Yi Qing Luo murmured these two clues as she lowered her eyes to look at the struggling black thread. A dim light flashed across his eyes. "The barrier is about to be broken. The people from the Great Joy sect should be here soon." Yi Qing Luo glanced at the tightly shut door. "Today, it's just a small punishment, another day, we'll continue." The smile on her lips deepened. He gently caressed the profound phoenix ring. Then, he sprinkled a handful of powder on Miao Rongrong. The next instant, Yi Qing Luo had already moved to the door of the room. Perhaps it was because the speed was too fast. Yi Qing Luo's hand which was pinching the black thread knocked against the door. She felt pain as soon as she ate. The black thread was like a soft snake as it squeezed into the gap of the door and disappeared. Yi Qing Luo wasn't flustered at all as she revealed an unfathomable smile. Following that, she opened the door and walked out. "King of venomous worms, let's go," she called out softly. The gigantic worm which was originally standing in the array leaped up and landed on Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. If it was an ordinary lady, with such a huge worm crawling on her body, she would definitely scream uncontrollably. But Yi Qing Luo expressed that she even dared to use her bare hands to catch venomous snakes and scorpions. Chapter 2643. Miao Rongrong's heart thumped when she saw Yi Qing Luo leaving so readily. She didn't believe that Yi Qing Luo would be so kind to let her off. Soon, Miao Rongrong's guess was confirmed. At the moment when Yi Qing Luo closed the bedroom door, Miao Yixiong, who was covered by goo worms, suddenly let out a roar like a wild beast. Miao Rongrong looked over in shock. She saw. Miao Yixiong stood up shakily. His body was crawling with goo worms. Because the Goo King was no longer controlling him. Those goo worms were disorderly as they scurried around. Miao Yixiong's body was full of flesh and blood, goo worms were crawling around, it was extremely disgusting and horrifying. The impact of this scene made Miao Rongrong's pupils dilate rapidly. An uncontrollable scream of fear came from her throat. Miao Rongrong tilted her head and vomited uncontrollably. She heard this scream. Miao Yixiong slowly turned his head, his cold eyes stared at Miao Rongrong without blinking. Goo worms crawled all over his body, which was covered in flesh and blood, as he staggered towards Miao Rongrong's direction. Don't come over. Miao Rongrong said in a hoarse and trembling voice, her body kept moving towards the corner of the wall. The moment she moved, Miao Rongrong discovered the strangeness of her body. Her whole body was so weak that she couldn't even lift a finger. Following that, an indescribable burning sensation surged from the soles of her feet. Just for a moment. Miao Rongrong felt like there were countless ants gnawing on her body. Her whole body felt extremely itchy. It itched so much that she twisted her body unconsciously. It itched so much that she wanted to rub against something unconsciously. It was like an itch from the bones. Her lower abdomen was burning with a ball of fire. Her whole body was itching unbearably. No matter how stupid Miao Rongrong was, she knew. Her body was not normal. She thought of the thin layer of powder that Yiqing Luo sprinkled on her before she left. Then, she saw Miao Yixiong staggering toward her like a wild beast. Miao Rongrong shuddered and suddenly realized. Yiqing Luo's plan. No. No. Absolutely not. That mysterious man. Why didn't he come to save her? Why didn't he come? No matter how much Miao Rongrong resisted in her mind. In the end, Miao Yixiong walked to her side. No matter how conscious Miao Rongrong was, hoping that the mysterious man would come in time. But the moment Miao Yixiong's hand touched her, the restlessness in her body drove her to take the initiative to approach him, Miao Yixiong's horrifying and disgusting body. Two bodies that reeked of blood touched each other. The goo worms crawled on the two people's bodies. The barrier around the Miao tribe's courtyard was completely broken. And because of Yiqing Luo's intentional actions, they had already sensed the strange profound qi fluctuations over here. Yi Nianxiu and the other forces in the Qinhua sect rushed over. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he could clearly hear the panting of a woman. It was accompanied by the sound of heavy breathing. Although there were more than 20 people in the group, none of them were young men or women. But hearing such a voice in front of so many people, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. One of the middle-aged men coughed a few times and said awkwardly, "I didn't expect Miss Miao to be such a woman who doesn't care about trifles. We must have misunderstood something. Let's leave first." The others nodded in agreement. Miao Rongrong was still unmarried. Chapter 2644. However, many people's gazes still landed on the room where the battle was intense. In their minds, Miao Rongrong's beautiful face appeared. Everyone couldn't help but have some kind of thought. But in front of Yi Nianxiu, they naturally couldn't show their dirty thoughts. All of them winked and were about to turn around and leave. What's going on? Rongrong wouldn't do such a thing, unless that person is. Suddenly, a cry of disbelief was heard. Everyone turned to look. The man who was staring at the bedroom with his eyes wide open in shock was none other than Miao Jingwei. Miao Jingwei was trembling all over. He wasn't afraid, but excited. But on his face, he still maintained his shocked expression. A woman's voice came from the bedroom. It was extremely familiar. The person in the room was definitely the overlord. Just now, the dark force fluctuation from this courtyard was deliberately attracted by Miao Rongrong, right? It was to tell everyone. She, Miao Rongrong, was the overlord's real woman. It seemed that the plan was a success. He had to cooperate with Miao Rongrong's plan. When everyone knew that the person the overlord doted on from now on was Miao Rongrong, their Miaogu family status would definitely soar. They might even surpass the Qinhua clan. Second young Master Miao, who were you talking about? Someone asked curiously when he saw Miao Jingwei hesitating. Many people shifted their gazes over at the same time. Miao Jingwei looked at them and shook his head awkwardly. I'm not sure. That person is not someone I can casually talk about, the more Miao Jingwei said so. The more curious the crowd was. To be able to make the arrogant Miss Miao, in the territory of the Qinhua clan, who was bedridden with a cold, dare to make such a big scene. Who was that man? Miao Jingwei evaded and said in a low voice, "We'd better leave first. If Miss Yi knows about the situation here, she'll turn the Qinhua clan upside down." It would have been better if he didn't mention the name Miss Yi. Once it was mentioned, the surrounding people immediately burst into an uproar. Miss Yi. That meant, the man inside was the overlord. She recalled that a few days ago, Miao Rongrong had tried to please Di Zun several times, but Di Zun and Yi Luo had rejected her mercilessly. Now, the overlord actually slept with Miao Rongrong behind Yi Luo's back. This was too shocking. Are you saying that the person inside is the overlord? Yi Nianxiu had been paying attention to the bedroom and frowned. The relationship between Di Zun and Yi Luo. He saw it very clearly. How could the overlord be with a woman like Miao Rongrong behind Yi Luo's back? I didn't say anything. Miao Jingwei raised his head abruptly as if he had spilled the beans. His panicked attempt to explain further confirmed what the overlord had said in the bedroom. The way everyone looked at Miao Jingwei and the person in the bedroom immediately changed. The teasing, filthy, and obscene gazes all disappeared at this moment. Yi Nianqiu's frown deepened. Could the person inside be His Majesty? As he spoke, he walked towards the bedroom. Chapter 2645. Miao Jingwei's words further confirmed that the person inside was Dmo Xian. The overlord and eldest young Miss Miao had this layer of relationship. Which also meant that from now onwards, the Miao tribe would have the protection of the overlord. Who would dare to offend the Miaogu family? Immediately, everyone rushed forward to stop Yi Nianqiu. Young sect master Yin, second young master Miao is right, we must not disturb them at such a time. If we spoil the mood of the person inside, we will not be able to bear the consequences. Yi Nianqiu's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. His gentle eyes were also covered with a layer of ice. His pupils were as dark as ink, extremely gloomy. Second young Master Miao is so sure that the person inside is the overlord. Why do I feel that you are intentionally leading us to think that the person inside is the overlord? After all, none of us can really inquire about the relationship between the overlord and eldest young Miss Miao, isn't it? When the last three words were spat out. Under Yi Nianqiu's invisible pressure, Miao Jingwei actually felt his legs turning into jelly. His breathing was a little messy. I did not intentionally lead you. The person inside is the overlord. The overlord had long fallen in love with Rongrong at first sight, otherwise Rongrong would not possibly stick her warm face to a cold but in front of so many people. After saying a few words, Miao Jingwei became more and more confident. Even the overlord would not be able to escape the control of the ancestors' forbidden technique. The person inside was undoubtedly the overlord. Yi Nianqiu did not believe that the overlord would do such a thing. But, Miao Jingwei's confident tone. He did not know how to refute. And Miao Jingwei's certainty and confidence made all the powerhouses believe that Dmo Xian and Miao Rongrong had a close relationship. Everyone's smiles towards Miao Jingwei became even more gentle and amiable. A few of them tugged at Yin Yanxiu and advised him softly, "Young sect master, no matter who is inside, we should not disturb them. Let's leave this place first. If the person inside really finds out and spoils the mood, we are all men, we definitely know how it feels, it's not a good feeling." Miao Jingwei's mind rippled when he saw everyone's respectful and fawning actions. He became increasingly pleased with himself. These people were so respectful to Dizun after hearing that Dizun had such a relationship with their Miao Miao's young Mississippi. In the future, when they saw the overlord listening to their Miao clan's young mistress, wouldn't he have to worship them like gods? "Young sect master Yin, I know you have a good relationship with Miss Yi, but isn't it normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Only our young mistress of the Miao tribe is worthy of such an outstanding man like Dizun." Miao Jingwei smiled proudly. "Young sect master Yin, your emotions are so unstable. You'd better leave first. Don't disturb the overlord's mood. After all, the overlord is still in Rongrong's bedroom. He won't be coming out anytime soon," he drawled. Everyone nodded in agreement. He pulled Yin Yanxiu even harder, afraid that he would disturb the overlord. However, just as the crowd was pushing and yelling, clamoring to leave, a clear and pleasant voice with a hint of laughter rang out leisurely, "Are you talking about Xian?" Chapter 2646. Everyone felt a chill down their spines as their bodies stiffened. This voice. Wasn't it Yi Luo's voice? Why was Yi Luo here? Could it be that he was here to catch a girl? Thinking of Yi Luo's valiance, everyone's body trembled. No way. She absolutely could not let Yi Luo know that the overlord had already gotten together with Miao Rongrong behind her back. Everyone racked their brains, trying to think of a way to deceive this matter. But in the bedroom, that burst of sound, it really made one unable not to pay attention to the commotion over there. "All of your backs are facing me, don't tell me you're feeling guilty." Yi Qing Luo's voice got nearer. It was clear and melodious, like a silver bell, extremely pleasing to the ear. But unfortunately, it made everyone's heart surge with a chill. "What do you think, what happened to Xian?" That voice continued. The crowd trembled even more violently. Strange. They were obviously very clear. The current Yi Luo was already the overlord's old love. It was uncertain whether the overlord still wanted Yi Luo. By right, there was no need for them to fear Yi Luo. But they still couldn't control themselves. Under Yi Luo's imposing manner, Miao Jingwei was feeling complacent when he heard Yi Luo's clear voice. He recalled the humiliation he had suffered in Yi Luo's hands. Immediately, he turned his head around complacently, following the voice. He looked at Yi Qing Luo. What else could it be? Isn't it because the overlord has taken a liking to Rong? His complacent voice stopped abruptly. His eyes were so shocked that they almost popped out from his eye sockets. He opened his mouth wide as he raised his hand abruptly, rubbing his eyes. He looked over again. His expression was steely green. At this moment, everyone started to turn their heads over. When they saw the young lady behind them clearly, their reactions were almost the same as Miao Jingwei's. Shock, disbelief, astonishment. One by one, floated past everyone's eyes. The next moment, everyone stared fiercely at Miao Jingwei. You. Miao Jingwei was met with everyone's gaze, as he retreated a few steps, with a frightened look. What about me? Yi Qing Luo smiled as her eyes squinted. Miao Jingwei's heel bumped into something and he fell to the ground. He put his hands on the ground and kept crawling backward. Di-Zun, why is Di-Zun here? That's right. Standing behind them was not only Yi-Qing Luo, who was dressed in a fiery red robe, but also Dmo Xian, who was dressed in a billowing purple robe. Dmo Xian's hand was tightly wrapped around the young lady's waist. It was a very possessive gesture. A pair of narrow peach blossom eyes stared at Yi-Qing Luo's side profile without blinking. The two of them just stood in front of them. Everyone could feel an overwhelming pressure pressing down on them. Cold sweat appeared on everyone's foreheads. Di-Zun was here. Then, who was the person inside the house? Di-Zun, Lady Yi. When Yi Nianxiu saw this, his face was filled with joy as he broke free from the few people surrounding him, as he took quick steps towards Yi-Qing Luo's direction. Yi-Qing Luo squinted her eyes as she lazily leaned into Dmo Xian's arms, giving a languid smile. Earlier I seem to have heard you talking about something. Miao Rongrong and Maya Xian. Only eldest young Miss Miao is worthy of Maya Xian. This sentence was obviously asked in an extremely calm tone. But when it reached everyone's ears, everyone felt a burst of chilliness. Chapter 2647. Everyone shuddered. Miao Xingwei was so frightened that he immediately knelt on the ground. The overlord's words were obviously infuriated. Someone tried to salvage the situation as he said anxiously, that's right, that's right. Putting the Honorable Lord Di-Zun together with Miao Rongrong, that shameless vixen, is an insult to His Majesty. Overlord, it's all because of this second young Master Miao's fallacious words that we misunderstood. If it wasn't for Miss Yi and the Overlord's arrival, I'm afraid we would have been deceived by the Miao people. Overlord, the Miao people tried their best to make us misunderstand you. You must punish the Miao people severely. The crowd spoke one after another. Earlier they tried to please Miao Xingwei so much. Now how heartless they were. They were wholeheartedly trying to push the Miao people out, so that the Overlord's anger would not fall on them. But, no matter how they pleaded or complained, Dmo Xian didn't say a word. He didn't even look at them. His eyes were fixed on Yi-Qing Luo without blinking. His eyes were warm, as though there was only Yi-Qing Luo in his world. Dmo Xian remained silent. The crowd felt a chill down their spines. All of them were shivering, almost kneeling on the ground to beg for mercy. Yi-Qing Luo gently held Dmo Xian's palm as she raised her head slightly, revealing a smile towards him. Her eyes were gentle, as though she was praising him. Dmo Xian's pair of warm peach blossom eyes instantly revealed a smile. Yi-Qing Luo squeezed Dmo Xian's palm once again as she turned her head over. The gentleness on her face faded away as her smile was tainted with frost. I wonder what Xian did to make everyone misunderstand. Her words had just ended. Coincidentally, Miao Rongrong's moan was heard from the bedroom. Yi-Qing Luo's brows rose as her gaze shifted towards the bedroom. Everyone revealed an awkward expression. Yi-Qing Luo laughed lightly. Second young Master Miao, didn't you say that eldest Miss Miao was infected and bedridden, on the verge of death? How could she have such a good nature, to put on such a show? Miao Xingwei knelt on the ground softly, his eyes filled with terror as he looked at Yi-Qing Luo. Especially after hearing Yi-Qing Luo's question, his body started to tremble like a sieve. Yi-Qing Luo continued to smile. Since eldest young Miss Miao is busy, then if eldest young Miss Miao were to find out that everyone is eavesdropping, wouldn't she be ashamed to death? We'll leave now, we were too rash. We'll leave now. Everyone couldn't wait to leave. Hearing what Yi-Qing Luo said, all of them seemed as though they were fleeing as their legs trembled, wanting to leave. Miss Yi, we didn't come here on purpose. Yi Nianxiu's refined and handsome face flushed with a tinge of red. There was an extremely strong fluctuation of profound energy in the Miao tribe's courtyard just now. We were worried that something had happened here, so we specially rushed over. We didn't expect that, he explained. He didn't want Yiqing Luo to misunderstand that he was such a dirty person. As soon as he finished speaking, a pair of cold eyes fell on him. Yi Nianxiu was stunned. He looked into the overlord's clear eyes. The Dizun's eyes were extremely cold, with a hint of hatred. She seemed to be extremely disgusted that he was talking to Yiqing Luo. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo sensed it as her little hand held his big palm tightly. Her slender brows creased as she raised her eyes to look at Dmo Xian. Don't fool around. Dmo Xian pursed his thin lips as his eyes were fluctuating with emotions. After some time, he seemed to be annoyed as he turned his head away. Yi Nianxiu looked at the overlord in a daze as a sliver of astonishment flashed past his eyes. Why did it feel like? Chapter 2648. Just as Yi Nianxiu was feeling puzzled, Yiqing Luo's clear voice interrupted his thoughts. Young sect master Yin. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly towards him. The profound energy fluctuations which you sensed should be released by me. Yi Nianxiu was startled. You? But didn't you just arrive? Hearing these conversations, those who wanted to flee the scene also stopped in their tracks. They sensed the fluctuation of dark force. Was it Miss Yi who released it? Could it be? What conflict did Miss Yi have with young Miss Miao just now? Everyone's gossipy hearts were stirred. Early this morning, second young Master Miao came to our courtyard to cause trouble, begging me to save their young Miss Miao. Ah Xian and I came here, but we fell into Chief Miao's trap. He tried to use gu on me and Ah Xian. In order to avoid Chief Miao's trap, I had no choice but to use my profound strength and leave with Ah Xian. Just now, I saw a group of you rushing over here. I was worried that Chief Miao would place goo worms on you, so I came over to take a look, but to think. As Yiqing Luo said that, she took a glance inside the bedroom. The intense sounds were still going on. Miao Jingwei had knelt in her courtyard this morning. Butler Yin was also present, as well as other onlookers. If she brought Dmo Xian along and pretended that she had just appeared, it would be too fake. When they opened the door and saw Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong, he would only think that she was the one who had done it. Half-truths and half-lies came out of Yiqing Luo's mouth again. Especially when the overlord was by the side. Everyone decisively chose to believe him. I was wondering why second young Master Miao was so sure that the person who was having sex with Miss Miao was the overlord. You are trying to set the overlord up. No wonder he's been luring us. The Miao tribe leader wants to poison the overlord. Trying to use goo on us. They want to turn us into their Miao tribe's puppets? Miao Jingwei found it hard to breathe under the pressure of countless comments. In the face of the crowd's accusations and hateful gazes, none of them could hold back. Some kind of yellow liquid spilled out from where he was sitting. The fishy smell made people feel disgusted. This is a trap set by the Miao tribe. Let's go. Let's barge in now and see what else they want to say. With that, a large group of people rushed into Miao Rongrong's bedroom. Among them, there were those who wanted to curry favor with the Dizun and distance themselves from the Miao tribe. He was also angry because he was used by the Miao tribe and almost offended the Dizun. Seeing that the crowd was getting out of control, Yi Nianxiu immediately stepped forward to stop them. Everyone, let's wait for young Mistress Miao to come and ask her questions when it's convenient. If we barge in now, it would be our fault. However, just as he reached the bedroom door, Yi Nianxiu's expression changed. That's not right, the smell of blood, there is a very strong smell of blood inside. The expressions of the indignant crowd froze. Yes, there was a strong smell of blood coming from the closed bedroom. However, Miao Rongrong and the man's voices continued. Under such a heavy stench of blood, he could still continue. Wait, don't you feel that? Something is wrong. The more they thought about it, the stranger they felt. We're outside, and we're making so much noise. No matter how good the soundproofing is, they must have heard our voices. How could they continue? Could something have happened to him? Everyone looked at each other. Chapter 26:49. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she pondered for a moment. Something is indeed not right, but it's not convenient for us to go in, so it's better to let second young Master Miao go in first to take a look. Miao Jingwei, who was called out, suddenly raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo in shock. What are you looking at? Didn't you hear what Miss Yi said? Why don't you go in and take a look? A man kicked Miao Jingwei, lifted his collar, and pushed him to the door of the bedroom. Under the pressure, Miao Jingwei could only brace himself and push the door open. The strong smell of blood assailed their nostrils. Miao Rongrong's cries, which sounded like she was going to die in the next moment, became clearer and clearer. Miao Jingwei's hands trembled. Pushed by the people behind him, he walked in with trembling legs. The door was pushed open. The messy and bloody scene in the house was reflected in everyone's eyes. Not a single part of the bedroom was intact. It was as if they had just gone through an extremely intense battle. This house had not collapsed yet. It was really sturdy. Miao Jingwei moved closer with the speed of a tortoise. He looked in the direction of the voice. No matter how much mental preparation he had, at this moment, she couldn't help but scream. Almost subconsciously, Miao Jingwei turned around and was about to run. However, he staggered and tripped on the ground, his body falling heavily on the ground. His face bumped into something. The stench and nauseating stickiness made his face scrunch up. Miao Jingwei stretched out his hand, trembling as he tried to pry it away. However, what he held in his hand was a severed limb. Blood continued to flow out of the wound. Miao Jingwei was so frightened that he screamed and threw away the severed limb in his hand. When everyone saw Miao Jingwei's reaction, they couldn't hold back their curiosity and walked in. When the gaze looked in that direction, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. There were also some people who couldn't take it. They leaned against the wall and vomited. The scene in the room was truly unbearable to look at. Miao Rongrong was pressed to the ground. Her usually extremely beautiful face had long been deformed and was stained with thick blood. Her naked body was covered with scars and blood. One of his arms was severed from the shoulder. One of his arms was severed at the wrist. And the man on top of her was doing the most primitive of actions. His entire body was covered with densely packed bugs. Those bugs were still crawling in and out of their wounds. It was really disgusting. The bedroom was instantly filled with more than 20 people. His surprised voice finally attracted the attention of the two people. The man stopped moving and turned his head bit by bit. Everyone saw the face that was covered by densely packed insects, as well as the faintly visible white bones. Goosebumps broke out all over his body. The people present were all profound practitioners who had seen the world and had experienced slaughter. But this scene really challenged the bottom line of their tolerance. Just when everyone's stomachs were churning and they were trying to stabilize their image, Miao Jingwei was like a madman, desperately holding his head and screaming, "Impossible! How could the clan leader be devoured by the goo formation? No! This is absolutely impossible." He raised his voice. Yiqing Luo expressed that she couldn't help but give Miao Jingwei a thumbs up. As expected of a pig-like teammate. She was still worried about what excuse to use to divert everyone's thoughts to the injuries of the goo worms. Miao Jingwei had already given her a perfect excuse. This sentence was said by Miao Jingwei. Chapter 26:50. As expected, when Miao Jingwei's words fell into everyone's ears, everyone immediately turned around and ran for the door. Was that a goo worm? That was the Miao tribe's goo worm. Although they did not know goo. But it was also very clear. Once they were infected by a parasite, they would wish for death. Who would have thought that the Miao tribe's leader would be devoured by the goo worm? So it's the poison's backlash. Yiqing Luo took over the conversation and entered the bedroom with Dmo Xian. After taking a clear look at the environment in the room, her expression changed slightly. Miss Yi, no one is controlling this goo insect. You and the Overlord shouldn't get too close to each other. No one knows what will happen if the goo insect gets close to you. Someone saw Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian walking into the house and immediately opened his mouth to dissuade them. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and saw Miao Yixiong grabbing a rag by the side and wrapping it around his waist. He didn't care that Miao Rongrong was also naked. Miao Rongrong woke up, and when she saw what was happening, she hugged herself tightly. Harming others will harm themselves in the end. Never thought that the venomous worms that you used to deal with me and Xian would make you suffer the consequences of your own actions. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yixiong indifferently. The flesh on Miao Yixiong's face rolled, and his voice was extremely hoarse. Bitch, Miao Yixiong, Xian and I will remember everything you and Miao Rongrong have done today. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her brows revealed a sinister look, so, as the price, Miao tribe leader and Miao tribe's sacred maiden's position, I'll accept it. The flesh and blood on Miao Yixiong's face rolled even more violently. He clenched his teeth savagely as he pounced towards Yiqing Luo. Slut! How dare you! How dare you! Before Miao Yixiong could pounce forward, a torrential terrifying profound energy laid horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo. Bang! Accompanied by this loud noise, Miao Yixiong was sent flying backward. He slammed into the wall beside him. Rumble! This collision. The bedroom, which was already on the verge of collapse, suddenly collapsed. Countless rocks smashed onto Miao Yixiong. That palm strike almost took half of Miao Yixiong's life. Then, when the house collapsed, he was smashed all over. He immediately vomited blood and fainted. Everyone looked at Yiqing Luo in shock. Dmo Xian's tall figure blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. His black hair danced in the strong wind. His purple robe fluttered in the wind. Miao Yixiong fainted. Dmo Xian then slowly turned around, his long arm once again hugged Yiqing Luo's slender waist tightly. His peach blossom eyes were filled with concern. He didn't hurt you, did he? Yiqing Luo's arms circled around his waist as she smiled and shook her head. No, Xian protected me very well. Dmo Xian's arms tightened. Soon, Yin Qinghao also hurried over. When he heard everyone's explanations, his face immediately darkened. Drag him to the Qinyu sect's dungeon. How dare you act so openly in my Qinyu sect? Yin Qinghao was infuriated. The people of the Miao tribe are really capable. This sect master is not done with the Miao tribe. Poison Dizun. Trying to push Miao Rongrong to the Overlord. If it wasn't for Yi Luo's quick-wittedness, the Overlord was really poisoned by the worm. The one who had to bear the Overlord's wrath was the Qinyu sect. How could Yin Qinghao not be angry? How could he not be annoyed? When the guards who followed behind saw Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong covered in worms, they didn't dare to lift them up. Chapter 26:51. The guards were stunned as they turned to look at Yiqing Luo. Yin Qinghao was also slightly stunned. Miss Yi has some understanding towards goo worms. Miao tribe's future sacred maiden told me. Yiqing Luo smiled mysteriously. Future sacred maiden. Everyone instinctively looked towards Miao Rongrong. On seeing Miao Rongrong, who was covered in blood, they retracted their gazes. The current Miao Rongrong had lost both her hands and her reputation was ruined. There was no way she could take part in the sacred maiden selection. Furthermore, Miao Yixiong wanted to use goo worms to control the overlord. The Miao Gu family was a huge clan which had existed for close to 1,000 years. Shouldn't it be annihilated? Miss Yi is planning to change the dynasty. One of the slightly older men asked carefully. Yiqing Luo smiled as her eyes squinted. By then, everyone will know. Saying that, she didn't continue to stay as she pulled Dmo Xian and left this courtyard. When they left, there were still people rushing towards the courtyard one after another. Probably not too long later, the entire North Continent, or even Nirvana realm, would all know about the Miao father and daughter duo's deeds. After leaving the courtyard, Yiqing Luo brought Dmo Xian and speedily turned to a corner. She turned sideways as she looked at the people who were heading towards the courtyard, as her lips curled into a faint cold arc. She didn't intend to let the Miao father and daughter duo die just like that. Not to let them see it with their own eyes. Everything they had spent so much effort for, had become the possession of Miao Yi, whom they had always despised and despised. How could they be worthy of their unscrupulous methods? Now, she had more important things to confirm. Earlier, that black thread which was pulled out from Miao Rongrong's eyes. She specially smeared soul-chasing powder on it. With this soul-chasing powder, she could easily follow that black thread and find the person who controlled Miao Rongrong. Perhaps she could also find out who the mysterious person who had been in contact with Miao Rongrong was. But if she really met that mysterious person, could the current Xian resist against him? Lil Luo, Seeing Yiqing Luo looking at him, Dmo Xian's handsome face, which was like a god, revealed a smile. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she raised her hands and cupped his face. She gazed deeply into his eyes. Warmth and joy rippled in Dmo Xian's eyes. The only thing that was missing was his devilish charm. Yes, the current Dmo Xian was no longer the Dmo Xian from before. Ever since Dmo Xian had helped her block the love goo and the heart separation goo, when she opened her eyes, she sensed that something was wrong with Dmo Xian. If it was any other time. When Dmo Xian opened his eyes, he saw that she was injured by Miao Yixiong. He would definitely pay attention to her injuries at the first moment. And he was angry because of it. However, Dmo Xian did not even utter a single word. He just looked at her with that kind of gentle and affectionate gaze. Moreover, he had become extremely domineering. He was extremely possessive. He couldn't bear to leave her even for a moment. Dmo Xian was ultimately still affected by the love worm. The first person he saw was her. So I clung to her. If the first person he saw was Miao Rongrong, would he also look at Miao Rongrong in the same way? This thought flashed past her mind. Yiqing Luo's mood instantly wasn't beautiful anymore. She should poison Miao Rongrong a few more times. Let Miao Rongrong suffer and not die. Daring to think of her man. Luckily, the first person Dmo Xian saw was her. Chapter 2652. I'm going to a place and it might be very dangerous. Xian, stay here and wait for me, alright? Yiqing Luo tried her best to speak in a gentle tone. Not knowing if it was her misperception. Somehow she felt. After Dmo Xian was inflicted with the love worm, not only was his attachment towards her, he had a stubborn persistence. His intellect seemed to have been obstructed. Using old man Tsang's words. That was Dmo Xian didn't know how to think about anything other than her. He also didn't know how to think about anyone or anything other than her. He only knew how to stay by her side, hug her, look at her, not leaving her side for even a moment. Even earlier in Miao Rongrong's courtyard, Dmo Xian said, "This lord is not blind," was muttered softly in front of Dmo Xian before she appeared. Seemingly, except when he was facing her, he could still converse normally. But in front of others, he didn't seem to be able to see anyone else. Unless the others were implicated and had something to do with her. Luckily he had a respectable status. And he was temperamental. Even if he ignored others, they wouldn't think that he was affected by the worm, and would only think that he was in a bad mood and didn't want to bother with others. No. Dmo Xian, who was inflicted with the love worm, still knew how to reject, "I want to be with you." An expected answer. What Dmo Xian was talking about was the love worm. It was the love worm that formed an attachment towards her. Which meant to say, he wanted to see her at all times. Dmo Xian would not let her leave alone. Yiqing Luo tiptoed and kissed his lips, smiling, then. "Ah, Xian must listen to me and follow me." Dmo Xian nodded without hesitation, "All right." In the end, he looked at her tenderly and added a sentence, "When we return, Lil Luo, will give you a reward." He raised his hand and his slender fingers pointed to the place where Yiqing Luo had kissed earlier. Yiqing Luo. This fellow, was he really inflicted with the love worm? What happened to the promise of listening to her? Why did he still know how to negotiate terms with her? Ahem. Old man Song coughed awkwardly in his mind. Dizun is different from ordinary people. His willpower is also different from ordinary people. Naturally, he is different from other people who have been poisoned by the love goo. Yiqing Luo pinched Dmo Xian's handsome face fiercely, "All right. Reward." Dmo Xian immediately revealed a bewitching smile. "All right, let's go." Yiqing Luo pulled Dmo Xian's hand and quietly left in the direction of the soul-chasing powder. The moment the two of them left the corner, a tall and slender figure slowly appeared at the place where the two of them had been standing. The man's facial features were gentle and refined, looking towards the direction where Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian had left, his brows were filled with pain. He raised his hand and pressed it against his chest. He had finally fallen in love with a girl. That woman, she already had a fiancé. He could tell. Yi Luo really loved Dizun. It was obvious how much the overlord loved Yi Luo. But, because they loved each other, that made his heart ache even more. The man closed his eyes slightly. His breathing was painful and weak. "Master, tell me, how should I overcome this tribulation?" "Stay away from her." Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind. The man was startled and quickly turned his head around. What entered his eyes was a handsome man dressed in red robes. Although that man was dressed in red, but he emitted a sharp and icy cold aura. As though he had walked out from an ice cellar. His entire body was emitting a "keep away" aura. Chapter 2653. That red-clothed man was Zhu Wuxin. "Young sect master Gu, she's not a woman you can dream about," Zhu Wuxian warned coldly. Gu Jingyu's body stiffened as he stared blankly at Zhu Wuxian's expressionless face. "Death God Castle's castle master, you also," Zhu Wuxin's cold eyes swept over, and Gu Jingyu's words were stuck in his throat. That gaze was as sharp as a blade, as if it wanted to leave countless scars on his body. Gu Jingyu's heart thumped fiercely. This time, Gu Jingyu was completely dealt a heavy blow. He had originally thought that the woman he had taken a fancy to was the only woman in this world that he felt was worthy of him. But unexpectedly, in fact, he was not worthy of her. Her fiancé was Dizun. There was also a death god castle lord who was her admirer. In comparison, he wasn't even worth a fart. Zhu Wuxin did not look at him again. He walked directly towards the direction where Yiqing Luo had left. Death God Castle's castle master," Gu Jingyu suddenly raised his head and called out to Zhu Wuxin. Zhu Wuxin's footsteps paused slightly, his cold eyes filled with obvious impatience. She loves the Overlord very much. Will you give her up? When Gu Jingyu asked this question, there was a voice in his heart asking him the same question. Zhu Wuxin didn't turn back. He continued to walk forward. The man's cold voice came with the wind, she will only be mine. Following the trail of the soul-chasing powder. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian had already left Qinhua City. He had actually arrived, mass graves. The mass grave was extremely remote and dark. There was even a faint chilly breeze blowing past. Yiqing Luo had just neared this place when she acutely sensed that the airflow in the air was faintly mixed with some austere atmosphere. She grabbed Dmo Xian's arm tightly and quietly approached the direction of the soul-chasing powder. Did it fail? A cold voice sounded in a low voice. It was illusory and not real. Yiqing Luo immediately pinpointed the direction where the sound came from. She pulled Dmo Xian and leaned against the stone wall. Through the messy surroundings, Yiqing Luo could faintly see a tall and straight figure standing at the side of the mass grave. Fortunately, although Dmo Xian was poisoned by the love worm, his power was still there. The two of them held their breaths, not letting the person on the other side notice them. The man stood beside the mass grave. The air was filled with the smell of rotting corpses. It smelled awful and disgusting. However, that person didn't seem to be able to smell it. He raised an arm and seemed to be looking at something. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she clearly saw. That black thread was floating in that person's palm. His gaze swept to that person's face. His pupils constricted slightly. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold arc. As expected, it was him. Following the representative of the East Wave Continent's imperial family, little Princess Lan Lingnua, the bodyguard whom Lan Lingnua treated as her trump card, serene solitude. Ever since he saw the black lines in Miao Rongrong's eyes. Ever since he realized that Miao Yixiong seemed to have lost his mind. She had guessed that it might be related to Yu Ji. Because when they first met Yu Ji, she was on Yu Ji's body. She sensed a kind of profound yin qi which was similar to it. But Yiqing Luo was certain. Yu Ji wasn't the mysterious man who had been in contact with Miao Rongrong. Which meant there were at least two parties who looked for Miao Rongrong. Or perhaps Yu Ji and the mysterious man were in cahoots. Chapter 2654. The black thread was moving in his palm, as though it was arguing about something. A thread, like a living thing. It had its own thoughts. And it could talk to Yu Ji. Yiqing Luo expressed that it was really a rare sight. Yu Ji paused for a moment, suddenly his fingertips pinched the moving black thread. If it's seen through, the mission will fail, how should I explain to the revered one? That black thread, the entire thread was twisted, as though it was in extreme pain. Yu Ji seemed as though he couldn't feel the black thread on his fingertips, as he coldly hooked his lips. The mission failed, it's all because of you. Improper control, apologize to the revered one yourself. That tone was obviously a threat. The black thread seemed to be struggling. No one was willing to bear the wrath of the revered one. But, in the end, it still succumbed to Yu Ji's threat. The entire thread body hung limply on Yu Ji's fingers. Yu Ji's lips curled as his eyes flashed coldly, then go and apologize now. Saying that, he threw that black thread directly into the mass grave. Under the special imprint of the soul-chasing powder, Yiqing Luo could clearly see that black thread, which was like a strand of hair, was like a snake, speedily swimming in the wreckage of the corpses. In the tranquil mass grave, Yu Ji's cold and ethereal voice rang, Yu Yin, other than apologizing, don't say anything else. The black thread paused slightly. Immediately after, it flashed and completely left the mass grave. Yiqing Luo didn't immediately chase after it. Only when the aura of the black thread, which was the fellow named Yuan, completely disappeared, Yu Ji then slowly turned around, blended into the night, and left the mass grave. It was silent for half an incense's time. Yiqing Luo then pulled Dmo Xian out of their hiding place. In the air, she could still vaguely sense that extremely weak cold breath. She frowned slightly, a trace of blood-colored light faintly surfaced in her eyes, which disappeared in a flash. Hearing the name Yuan, Yiqing Luo was already certain. The black thread and Yu Ji were in cahoots. They were both the subordinates of that so-called revered one. That revered one, who exactly was he? What was his motive? Why, she always felt that this revered one was always pestering her. Could it be, she had something that the venerable one wanted? Little Luo, Suddenly, she heard the man's displeased voice. The force on his waist suddenly increased. Her face bumped into the man's thick chest. She collected her thoughts and looked up. She met the man's eyes, which were filled with her reflection. A chilly wind blew in the mass grave, fluttering Dmo Xian's black hair. It also blew on his purple robe. On top of that peerless beauty, that tempting face of crime. This level of breathtaking, even Yiqing Luo couldn't help but be bewitched. Don't think about anyone other than me. The man was very jealous, and his tone was very obvious. I don't like you to look at other people. Yiqing Luo burst into laughter. Could it be that he was jealous because she had placed all her attention on Yu Ji just now? He was poisoned by the love goo. He was surprisingly honest. Moreover, his honesty was adorable. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as she raised her hand and pinched his cheek. Ever since Dmo Xian was poisoned by the love worm, she had not moved at all, and had her hands all over his face. If it was usual times, she dared to pinch his face. He dared to eat her up cleanly, not leaving any dregs behind. When they returned to the courtyard, she would look for Miao Yi to discuss about helping Dmo Xian to cure the goo. But there wouldn't be this chance in the future. It was rare that she could pinch him to her heart's content. Chapter 2655. I'm not going to look anymore, be good. Yiqing Luo beamed as she said that, as she tiptoed and kissed his thin lips. The current Dmo Xian. He was very easy to coax. As expected, after Yiqing Luo did this action, the jealous man's face immediately lit up with a smile. He held Yiqing Luo's petite body tightly as he stared at her seriously, saying word by word, "You have to look at me. Whatever you want to do, I can help you." Following that, he pulled her hand and placed it on his chest. The rhythmic heartbeat was beating against her palm again and again. His taut muscles were hard yet elastic. This wasn't the first time Yiqing Luo touched his muscles. But every single time, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but blush. This is yours, if it's me. The current Dmo Xian's thinking was very simple and extremely stubborn. Yiqing Luo wasn't displeased by the man's overbearingness. On the contrary, her smile grew wider. Old man Song had said this before. Dmo Xian, who was poisoned by the love worm, all his actions were the most direct thoughts in his heart. His overbearingness. His possessiveness. He was filled with love for her. Because of the love worm, it was completely magnified. This was also why Old Man Song wanted her to be the first person Dmo Xian saw. Otherwise, based on Dmo Xian's character, if he really had to depend on Miao Rongrong because of the love worm, she was afraid that Dmo Xian would rather die than listen to the erosion of the love worm. Because right now, the person he depended on was Yiqing Luo. That was why Dmo Xian didn't resist at all, allowing the love worm's corrosion. Yiqing Luo smiled till her eyes curved as her face blushed, making her elegant face look extremely adorable. Her face was like a peach blossom and her eyes were like silk. No matter which man it was, there was no way to escape. The charm that Yiqing Luo released. Dmo Xian's eyes locked onto her deeply. That pair of peach blossom eyes were overflowing with colors, resplendent and dazzling. Almost based on instinct. Dmo Xian lowered his head and kissed her smiling lips. Both hands tightened the strength he used to hold her. There was an indescribable feeling clamoring from head to toe. With a clamor, he swallowed the person in his embrace. Yiqing Luo naturally felt the rising temperature from Dmo Xian's body. Her cheeks turned even redder, burning hot. Damn it! As expected of a man. They were all poisoned by love goo. A man's instinct was still there. Ah Xian, alright, the reward has ended, we need to continue chasing after that black line. Yiqing Luo held Dmo Xian's hand and raised her head, interrupting his instincts which were being driven. Ah Xian still had love goo in his body. Being too agitated at this moment was not good for one's health. The man who had been interrupted stopped moving, but he was extremely displeased. His almond-shaped eyes didn't hide his emotions at all. His entire person had sunk into a very low-pressure atmosphere. His shoulders slumped and his face was filled with displeasure, as well as the kind of pitiful look that Yiqing Luo despised. Yiqing Luo felt, the man in front of her now looked, it looked like a canine pet. Moreover, it was a very cute dog-type pet. It made Yiqing Luo's young lady's heart swelled up. She tiptoed and raised her hand, as she caressed the man's head, her voice was gentle as she smiled, alright Ah Xian, accompany me to do something first, alright? Dmo Xian indeed looked like a dog-type pet. The moment Yiqing Luo's hand landed on his head, the low pressure which was lingering around the man instantly dissipated. Chapter 2656. Such a Dmo Xian really made one unable to hold it in. Yiqing Luo looped her arm around his neck as she spoke in a low voice, after we return, I'll give you a reward, alright? His obsidian pupils gazed deeply at her for some time. The man then nodded his noble head. His face was filled with displeasure. But his lips were curled into a smile. Yiqing Luo was all smiles as she rubbed his head. Just as she was about to lock onto the location of the soul-chasing powder, Yiqing Luo suddenly felt a chill down her spine as she raised her head and looked towards a certain spot in the darkness as she suppressed her voice, "Who?" Her voice had just landed. The arm around her waist tightened. She raised her eyes again and the man's tall and broad back view was in front of her. He stood in front of her, his peerless face was filled with seriousness, "I'll protect Lil Luo, Yiqing Luo's fingers held his hand tightly as her 10 fingers intertwined with his. Following that, her gaze stared towards that direction. In the darkness, a figure was indistinctly discernible as it neared from afar. Very quickly, she saw the red-robed man's tall figure completely appearing in front of her eyes. Yiqing Luo's little head popped out from Dmo Xian's back and when she saw the person clearly, her expression congealed. Zhu Wuxian? Why was he here? Had he followed her here? Then, didn't he have seen Dmo Xian's abnormality? Indeed, Zhu Wuxian's icy cold eyes glanced coldly at Dmo Xian before falling onto her face. When he saw that only her little head was exposed, her entire body was completely covered by Dmo Xian. That pair of icy cold black eyes seemed to be even colder. What's the matter with him? Zhu Wuxian's voice was cold and hard, turned silly. It's none of your business. Hearing Zhu Wuxian's words, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. She instinctively dashed in front of Dmo Xian as she opened her arms wide and looked at Zhu Wu Axian vigilantly. Her subconscious action, which made Zhu Wu Axian's eyes dimmed. His complexion was slightly pale. The hands under the red robe were clenched tightly, as though he was restraining something. After a long time, he pursed his lips as his cold eyes continued to look at her. Yiqing Luo, you're mine. Your matters naturally concern me. Bam! A burst of dense, profound energy chopped downwards. The man behind Yiqing Luo revealed a sullen expression as he waved his sleeves and struck out a hurricane. Zhu Wuxin's eyes turned cold, his figure moving as fast as lightning. That dark force directly smashed onto the ground. The entire mass burial mound shook violently. It could be seen that Dmo Xian had used at least 50% of his strength. Seeing that Zhu Wuxin had dodged the attack, Dmo Xian's face turned frosty as he waved his sleeves again, about to strike again. Yiqing Luo immediately pounced forward and hugged his arm. She knew why Dmo Xian was angry. At this juncture, she didn't want Dmo Xian and Zhu Wu Axian to have a conflict. After all, Zhu Wu Axian now knew about what had happened to Dmo Xian. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge storm in the entire Nirvana realm. Those people who were unconvinced with Dmo Xian would definitely swarm over, hoping to take the opportunity to kill Dmo Xian and replace him. She would never allow such a thing to happen. Zhu Wu Axian, don't think that just because you've saved me a few times, you can continue to think that you're infallible. I, Yiqing Luo, am not anyone's possession, even if I also belong to Au Xian. Her pink lips pursed slightly as she looked at Zhu Wu Axian with a resolute gaze. I will repay you for saving me, but please don't use this as a reason to disturb my life. Her words paused for a moment. Chapter 2657. In love, there is no room for even a grain of sand. Your persistence towards me has caused me trouble and will make Au Xian unhappy. It wasn't that she was heartless. Facing this man who had a stubborn persistence towards her. Facing this man who had once shared a beautiful memory with this body. Facing this man who had saved her time and time again. To tell the truth, if they could become friends, she was extremely happy. But Zhu Wu Axian's persistence. She really had no way to repay him. Love was a matter between two people. There was no room for a third person. If she didn't love Zhu Wu Axian, then why should she give him any hope? This was the attitude towards her and Au Xian's love. The most correct attitude towards Zhu Wu Axian. Yiqing Luo's eyes sparkled with a red glow as she met Zhu Wu Axian's eyes tightly as she said word by word, "Don't in the end, we don't even have a chance to talk face to face peacefully." The last three words came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth. Zhu Wu Axian's body took a small step backwards. It was a very minute movement and not obvious at all. Don't. Dmo Xian's expression turned chilly as he pulled Yiqing Luo into his arms with a sunken expression. Yiqing Luo knew that the "don't" he was referring to. Not wanting her and Zhu Wu Axian to talk face to face peacefully. Feeling the warmth from the man, Yiqing Luo automatically hugged his waist as her little hand caressed his back, placating the man as she spoke in a warm voice. The opposite sex around me, other than Au Xian who is my lover, the others can only be brothers or friends. Her words seemed as though she was explaining to Dmo Xian. In actual fact, she was saying it for Zhu Wu Axian to hear. Zhu Wu Axian naturally understood what she meant. His expressionless cold face had a sliver of paleness. He was obviously expressionless. But between his brows, there was a chilly intent as well as a vicious air. Her words had infuriated Zhu Wu Axian. Yiqing Luo. Zhu Wu Axian's voice was chilly as the edges of his thin lips were extremely cold. Do you think that if I want you, I will allow you to be arrogant in front of me? Dmo Xian swiftly hugged her even tighter. His peach blossom eyes revealed a solemn vigilance. It seemed to be on guard against Chu Wuxin suddenly approaching. Yiqing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms as the expression on her face was very indifferent. Looking at Zhu Wuxian's tall figure which was emitting a cold aura, she pursed her lips slightly. I don't have any self-righteous thoughts. I just want to tell you that your persistence is useless to me. He has already become a fool, and you are still unwilling to leave him. A few veins appeared on Zhu Wuxin's forehead. His eyes were very cold, and the lines of his facial features were also extremely cold. As he spoke, he narrowed his cold eyes, which reflected a cold light. Dmo Xian's possessiveness towards Yiqing Luo. It was like a puppy protecting its food. There was killing intent. However, his aura was too weak. He looked like a fool. I think you're even more foolish. Her eyes were filled with anger. She couldn't stand someone mocking Dmo Xian. Xian did it to protect me, you don't know anything. I can also protect you. Zhu Wuxin stared into her eyes, as if he could not see the anger in her eyes. This man, was he sick in the head? No matter what she said to him, it felt like playing the lute to a cow. I don't need your protection. Yiqing Luo no longer had the patience to continue tangling with him. She retracted her gaze and looked at Dmo Xian. Xian, let's go. Chapter 2658. Zhu Wuxian, are you trying to threaten me? Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she looked at Zhu Wuxian with a gloomy expression. Zhu Wuxian's narrowed eyes were deep and cold. I'm only telling you out of goodwill that this backing of yours has already been destroyed. If you're smart enough, you should think of a way to find a good next. Next. Yiqing Luo murmured these two words and suddenly laughed out loud. Her eyes were filled with ridicule. Chu Wuxian, your persistence towards me is only because of the warmth I gave you when you were young. She paused, raised her eyes, and looked straight at him. There is only unwillingness. Zhu Wuxian's thin lips were still curled up. His grave and stern face was cold and had a faint trace of loneliness. I have never said that I love you. You are mine, so you should be mine. But, I'm not yours. Yiqing Luo calmly interrupted his words. Zhu Wuxin did not speak. His hands were tightly clenched under his red robe. He couldn't describe what he was feeling right now. He felt as if a nameless flame was surging in his body, wanting to burn everything in its surroundings. Yiqing Luo's words were too ear-piercing. It pierced his eardrums and caused waves of pain. He wanted to seal Yiqing Luo's mouth, so that Yiqing Luo would never be able to say anything that he didn't like to hear. Then, she would quietly stay by his side. That was enough. Why? He couldn't control his emotions. Yiqing Luo was the only lady who could move his heart. Could it be that this was the love that Yiqing Luo mentioned? His feelings for Yiqing Luo were not only moved, but love. This thought caused Zhu Wuxian to be startled. His pupils dilated unconsciously. The expression on his face was a little sluggish. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Zhu Wuxian's expression, which looked as though he had seen a ghost, and couldn't be bothered to bother about him. Aren't you afraid that I will really announce Dmo Xian's matter to the public? Seeing Yiqing Luo's back view without any hesitation, Zhu Wuxian's heart shuddered as he subconsciously opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo didn't turn back, nor did she stop her footsteps. He could only hear her cold voice, which was devoid of warmth. Just go ahead and say it. Even if Xian becomes the target of everyone, I will stay by his side and fight with him until the last moment. Zhu Wuxian couldn't say anything else. He stood there in a daze. His gaze was fixated on the direction where Yiqing Luo had disappeared. Yiqing Luo's figure disappeared for quite some time. Only then did Zhu Wuxin have a slight reaction. He slowly retracted his gaze and the frost in his eyes deepened. His heart was throbbing with pain. The pain made it hard for him to stand still. It clearly belonged to him, it was clearly his, he was just a little late, his things, but for another man, denied their commitment. Chu Wuxian's lowered eyes suddenly flashed with a sinister light. Yiqing Luo brought along the furious Dmo Xian and quickly left the mass grave. He released his perception and sensed that Zhu Wuxin hadn't chased after him. She then stopped and hugged Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's face was filled with gloomy clouds. Learning from Yiqing Luo's earlier actions, he cupped her face and directed her gaze towards himself. Until he saw his own reflection in Yiqing Luo's pupils. Only then did his anger subside slightly. Why didn't Lil Luo let me kill him? Dmo Xian pinched her face, expressing his unhappiness. Lil Luo said a lot of things to him. Chapter 2659. I don't like him. Dmo Xian lowered his head and unhappily rested his head on her neck. The man's warm breath sprayed on her skin. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Trying to calm down his little heart, the small hand gently stroked the back of the man's head. Well, I don't like him either. Lil Luo can only like me, he said gloomily. Yes, only Xian. Yiqing Luo nodded seriously. Dmo Xian finally revealed a smile. He was disturbed by Zhu Wuxin. When Yiqing Luo went to search for traces of the soul-chasing powder, he could no longer sense the soul-chasing powder. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled slightly. Usually, the reason why he could not sense the soul-chasing powder was, the only thing left was, water. The soul-chasing powder was something that could last for more than 3 days upon contact. The only thing that could get rid of the soul-chasing powder was water. The soul-chasing powder melted upon contact with water. However, what worried Yiqing Luo was the soul-chasing powder on the black thread rubbed off because the black thread drilled into the waterway, or was it discovered by the so-called Venerable One? If it was the latter, that mysterious sovereign and Yu Ji would probably notice it too. Their side might also be in danger. Doesn't Lil Luo have something to do? Why aren't you leaving? Dmo Xian saw Yiqing Luo's grave expression, and his shimmering peach blossom eyes floated a layer of daze. Not going, let's go back to Qinhua clan first. Yiqing Luo pinched the back of his hand. If it was before Dmo Xian was poisoned by the love worm. This matter, he could ask Dmo Xian for his opinion. When Dmo Xian went to the upper realm, he specially investigated the identities of Yu Ming, Yu Nu, Yu Ji, and the others, as well as the identity of the revered ones behind them. However, for the past few days, they had been showing off their affection. They had never discussed such a serious topic before. Now I want to discuss it. Dmo Xian reckoned that he didn't know anything about it. It was better to return to Joy's sect and ask Miao Yi how to get rid of the love goo. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian had just stepped into their courtyard. She saw that Yan Shao Yi and the rest had already set up their chairs and picked up their melon seeds, waiting for her to come back and gossip. Even the cold and aloof ghost martial artist was sitting in the corner. Facing so many pairs of interested eyes, Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes and asked directly, "Where's Yi and Xian Gui?" As soon as they returned, they locked themselves in their rooms. Yan Shao Yi glanced in the direction of Miao Yi's room, lowered her voice and asked curiously, "What exactly happened over at the Miao tribe?" From what they're saying, it seems like they're suffering the consequences of their own actions after scheming against you. Just like what they said. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards. At this moment, it was not only Yan Shao Yi who stood up. Even Qiao Jin and Peach couldn't help but stand up. They looked at each other in dismay. After some time, Yan Shaoyi swallowed a mouthful of saliva and raised her thumb. Qing Luo, beautifully done. Covered with goo worms. I really don't know how you came up with this idea, your taste is just too heavy. Xiao Jin trembled as he rubbed his arms, the both of them. Our father and daughter. The idea was thought of by themselves, I'm merely giving them a taste of their own medicine. Qing Luo gave an innocent and kind smile, moreover. Father and daughter, that might not necessarily be the case. Chapter 2660. Qing Luo raised her hand and blocked Peach's action. I'm not too sure, but you should know Miao Yi's identity, right? Peach rubbed her nose. You already know. Yan Shaoyi recalled that quiet girl. You mean, Miao Yi. She paused and muttered softly, Miao Yi, Miao Rongrong. It can't be. Yan Shaoyi looked at the both of them, seeking for an answer. She saw the both of them nodding their heads. Yan Shaoyi opened her mouth wide in astonishment. She had not expected this. That quiet girl who seemed to blend into the air was actually someone from the Miao tribe. Moreover, she was Miao Yixiong's daughter. It was no wonder that Miao Yi locked herself in her room after returning from the Miao tribe courtyard. That's right, they were saying that both of Miao Rongrong's hands were crippled. One side looked like it was cut off by a knife, while the other looked like it was bitten off by a magical beast. Xiao Jin winked at Qing Luo, don't tell me this was done by you. Qi. Qing Luo decisively betrayed her teammates, expressing that she wasn't that bloodthirsty. Qi. Xiao Jin pointed to Miao Yi's room. Earlier I saw your Qi and followed her to Miao Yi's room. Speaking of which, ever since Miao Yi appeared, her Qi had disappeared and didn't return to the pet space. She could sense that Qi was in a safe state. She thought that Qi had bitten a disgusting human's arm and ran off to relax. She had not expected it to follow Miao Yi back. I'll go take a look at Yi's room. Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian and was about to head over. Suddenly, a tender voice rang out, elder sister. Kitty Li, who had finally struggled free from Zhou Mo's embrace, pounced towards Qing Luo's arms. Kitty's ears drooped down. Her tone was filled with grievance. Sister, why ever since that frivolous man came, you don't bring me along for anything? Saying that, she stared at Zhou Mo's direction with her watery eyes. She just stared. That white-robed young man who was originally smiling evilly, suddenly froze as his expression sunk. Little wild cat, be careful. What? Kitty Li was still in a daze, not understanding Zhou Mo's meaning. The next moment, Kitty Li's black cat ears twitched as her strong sense of danger made her swiftly retreated backwards before she had even pounced into Qing Luo's arms. However, no matter how fast Kitty Li was, but the remnant power of the profound energy that attacked her still swept across Kitty Li. Kitty Li's petite body suddenly flew backwards. Kitty! Qing Luo didn't expect that the man beside her would suddenly make a move. Kitty Li was about to fall to the ground. Qing Luo's gaze turned cold as she immediately pulled Dmo Xian's arm away from her waist and was about to rush over to catch Kitty Li. A white figure was even faster than her. Kitty Li's body softly fell into Zhou Mo's arms. Ugh! Kitty Li's face was slightly pale. Just the aftershock alone had already caused her to suffer some minor internal injuries. If it wasn't for the feline beast's instincts that allowed him to dodge first, he was afraid that he would lose his life there. Zhou Mo looked at the pale expression of the girl in his arms. His usual devilish phoenix eyes were filled with a gloomy and cold intent. He clenched his fists tightly as he looked at Dmo Xian with a gloomy and raspy voice. Overlord, what do you mean by this? It wasn't hard to tell. He was filled with rage. Yiqing Luo was about to head over to check on Kitty Li's condition. But her wrist was held tightly by Dmo Xian. Chapter 2661. Dmo Xian's hand tightened as his expression turned gloomy and his eyes were deep and cold. Not allowed. He spat out 2 words coldly. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes. Xian, I'm angry. Her gaze was very calm. Her tone was very calm. On her face, there was no expression at all. Dmo Xian held her hand as it trembled slightly. His deep and cold aura dropped and instead added grievance, you can only be hugged by me. She's my sister. Yiqing Luo flung his hand away. This time, Dmo Xian didn't dare to hold her tightly. After Yiqing Luo struggled free, she immediately walked towards Kitty Li. She sensed that the man behind her was walking towards Kitty Li. He also lifted his feet, trying to chase up to her. But he immediately stopped in his tracks. Yiqing Luo didn't turn back. She knew that Dmo Xian was poisoned by the love goo, which was why he was like this. But she wasn't going to leave him hanging. In future, he would still make a move on her brothers because of this. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand his attack. She must let Dmo Xian know the seriousness of this matter. Walking towards Kitty Li, Yiqing Luo fed her a medicinal pill to treat her internal injuries. Kitty Li nestled in Zomo's arms, her petite body was like an obedient kitten. She sneaked a glance at Dmo Xian, who was behind Yiqing Luo. Her pale face didn't blame him but was puzzled. Sister, what's wrong with Overlord brother-in-law? Everyone present could tell that something was wrong with Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo caressed Kitty Li's face as she gave a warm smile. Kitty Li, don't be afraid, there won't be a next time. Her hand had just landed on Kitty Li's face. The surrounding air had obviously turned cold. Everyone looked towards Yiqing Luo's back in unison, and after that, they all started to shiver. Yiqing Luo straightened her body slightly and glanced sideways at Dmo Xian. That icy cold man who was overflowing with viciousness, as though he was going to destroy the heaven and earth at the next moment. Just because she had glanced at him. Instantly, he lowered his head as his anger was completely restrained. Seeing this, Zomo, who had been livid, could not continue to be angry. What's wrong with Dizun? In order to save me, you blocked Miao Yixiong's forbidden goo technique. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past everyone present as her pink lips spat out the words, love goo. Everyone was stunned. Didn't those people say that you and Dizun are fine? How could the Overlord? No matter how strong Xian is, he's still human. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyelids. His current situation is a little special, don't be angry. Zomo frowned as his gaze swept past Dmo Xian. You're looking for Miao Yi, just to ask about the cure for the love worm. Yes. Yiqing Luo took a look at Kitty Li in his arms. Bring Kitty Li to rest for a while. When she wakes up, she'll be fine. Zomo tightened his grip, took a look at Kitty Li and then at Dmo Xian. That pair of long and narrow red phoenix eyes slightly narrowed. Seeing that he is injured, I will not argue with him about hurting the little wild cat. Saying that, he carried Kitty Li and took quick steps towards his own room. Everyone finally digested this news as they sized up Dmo Xian while asking carefully, Qing Luo, that Dizun is now full of possessiveness towards you. He can't see. Other than me, if you get close to me, you will be treated as an outsider. Yiqing Luo turned around and looked at the man who had been standing silently behind her. Chapter 2662. Dmo Xian drooped his head as his eyes dimmed. The glow which he brought along seemed to have disappeared at this moment. That peerless face was filled with grievance. This made Yiqing Luo think. A dog pet which was abandoned by its owner. But, although the man was feeling aggrieved, but his eyes were still staring at her without blinking. Extreme focus. Looking at her was like looking at the entire world. It was filled with attachment towards her. No matter how she looked at him, he looked a little pitiful. Yiqing Luo's heart instantly softened. Cough, cough, cough. Why do I feel that? After the overlord was inflicted with the love goo, he became even more oppressive. Peach's face was filled with abuse as he said that as he turned his head to one side. Originally we were already used to being oppressed. Now we're going to be stuffed again. Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin said expressionlessly as they shifted their gazes away at the same time. Yiqing Luo ignored their teasing. She suppressed the softness in her heart, suppressing the urge to go over and rub Dmo Xian's black hair, to let his eyes regain its luster. After that, she continued to look at him coldly. Come over. Dmo Xian blinked as his eyes glowed slightly, as though he was surprised that his Lil Luo was calling him. Come over. Yiqing Luo repeated. The brilliance in Dmo Xian's eyes turned even brighter. He obediently walked towards Yiqing Luo. When he reached Yiqing Luo, he stretched out his arms to hug her. Stop. Yiqing Luo raised her hand to stop his actions. Dmo Xian's expression collapsed as he pursed his lips in grievance as he drooped his head. The more she looked, the more he looked like a dog pet. Yiqing Luo continued to put on a cold face. Do you know your mistake? Dmo Xian stared at her face as his voice was filled with grievance. You can only be hugged by me. I don't like it. A man's voice was magnetic and pleasant to listen to. Mellow and mellow, like fine wine. At this moment, coupled with this grievance, it sounded like a dog pet trying to act cute and coquettish. As someone who was attracted to voices, she simply couldn't hold it in. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath to calm herself down as she continued to reason with him. The people here are all my friends, my brothers. If you hurt them, I will be very sad, very upset. Pausing for a moment, she pursed her pink lips and said, Does Xian want to see me sad and sad? Dmo Xian panicked and immediately shook his head. I don't want to. Then, in order not to make me sad, not to make me upset, you must promise me that you are not to make a move on these people whom I care about. Yiqing Luo took the opportunity to hold Dmo Xian's hand. His hand was cold. He probably wanted to get closer to her. He was also afraid that she would really get angry. He had been perturbed, restless, and nervous. As a result, his hand was so cold. Yiqing Luo's hands wrapped around his hands. Her small hands couldn't close his big palms at all. But such an action made Dmo Xian's face reveal a smile. A very pure and clean smile. Ah, Xian, you haven't answered my question. Yiqing Luo rubbed his hand, using her own warmth to warm him up. When the question was raised, Dmo Xian's smile froze. He raised his eyes and swiftly swept a glance at the few people seated around them. On discovering that there were a few men, his expression turned even uglier. He was just about to shake his head. But he met with Yiqing Luo's slightly narrowed eyes. Lil Luo, Dmo Xian suppressed his voice as he felt aggrieved. Yiqing Luo knew that after he was poisoned by the love goo, he was still unable to control himself and let others get close to her. But she had to correct this bad habit of Dmo Xian. Chapter 2663. Recalling the scene earlier when Dmo Xian made a move on Kitty Li, Yiqing Luo hardened her heart and tried to struggle free from his hand. She was just putting on an act. Dmo Xian couldn't bear to let go of her. So after a few struggles, Yiqing Luo was hugged tightly in Dmo Xian's arms. Although he was a man who was poisoned by the love goo, but he was extremely sensitive towards matters regarding Yiqing Luo. He knew that if he really let Lil Luo struggle free, Lil Luo would be even angrier. He couldn't bear to make Lil Luo angry. But she didn't want Lil Luo to be snatched away. Lil Luo was his. This thought made Dmo Xian's heart twitch violently. His tall and sturdy body also trembled for a moment. What's the matter? Yiqing Luo nestled in his arms and could clearly feel his body's reaction as she immediately raised her head and asked worriedly. Dmo Xian still had that aggrieved expression. The gaze in his peach blossom eyes was exactly the same as a dog-type pet. He shook his head as though the reaction in his heart earlier was just an illusion. His eyes were fixated on her as he spoke with grievance. I don't want Lil Luo to be sad, upset. That look really made Yiqing Luo unable to control herself. Her eyes softened as she stretched out her hand and rubbed his head gently. I can't bear to make Xian angry, so I will try my best to avoid having too much contact with them. But Xian must promise me that he will not make a move without my permission. Dmo Xian lowered his body so that her hand could easily rub his head. This action once again made Yiqing Luo turn cute. Her Xian. He was really becoming more and more like a dog-type pet. Was he planning to develop towards the direction of a loyal dog? Just as Yiqing Luo's young lady's heart was overflowing, a man's low and hoarse grievance voice was heard, I won't make a move, Lil Luo, don't be angry with me. That grievance made Yiqing Luo's eyes filled with a smile. She held Dmo Xian's face and pinched his face, not angry, but earlier you hurt my sister. My sister is also your sister, so I must punish you. Sister. Dmo Xian muttered these two words in a low voice, as if he did not understand the profound meaning behind it. Following that, he raised his head again as his eyes filled with deep emotions congealed on Yiqing Luo. I don't want a sister, I only want Lil Luo. Silly. Yiqing Luo was overjoyed. This man, after being poisoned by the love goo, he kept saying sweet nothings one after another. However, no matter how alluring her beauty was, the punishment that should be given must be given. Only in this way would Dmo Xian have a good memory. And most importantly, it was not convenient for her to let Dmo Xian follow. As a result, everyone's faces were filled with shock, their eyes were blinded by the light, and their mouths were agape with shock. Yiqing Luo held Dmo Xian's hand as they walked towards the direction of Miao Yi's room. He stood in front of Miao Yi's room. Yiqing Luo pushed Dmo Xian to a position. Stand here, wait for me to come out. No. Dmo Xian's eyes widened as he quickly diffused the mist. But before he could finish his words, Yiqing Luo had already interrupted his rejection. I'm in the room. Stay here and you can sense my presence. Don't move, don't go in. Dmo Xian felt even more wronged. Chapter 2664. In the end, Dmo Xian felt wronged as he watched Yiqing Luo walk into Miao Yi's room. He was like a large-scale dog pet. He stood obediently at the spot where Yiqing Luo had sat, not moving an inch. His eyes also stared unblinkingly at the tightly shut door. He was extremely focused. As though he had already seen the person he wanted to see through the door. Yiqing Luo pushed the door open and just closed it. A furry little thing pounced on her. Master, a child's crisp voice was filled with joy. Yiqing Luo rubbed Chi-Chi's little head. Why did you sneak back with Yi, not waiting for me? Chi-Chi shook its little head and its tail kept swaying. Master, do you know who Chi-Chi discovered? Chi-Chi was rarely so excited. She remembered the last time she was this excited was when she met Raging Flame. Qing Luo. Miao Yi's hoarse voice was heard from the bed under the veil. Apparently, she had just cried. Yiqing Luo stroked Chi-Chi, indicating that whatever it was, they could talk about it later. Following that, she put Chi-Chi down and slowly walked towards the bed. Are you very sad? Under the veil, Miao Yi's figure looked extremely slender. Miao Yi sobbed slightly and said in a hoarse voice, not sad, just. I can't understand why they want to treat me like this. Can you lift the veil? Yiqing Luo's knees pressed against the side of the bed. Miao Yi was stunned for a moment, her little body shrunk and said, just don't laugh at me. Yiqing Luo lifted the veil and hung it on both sides of the bed. Miao Yi curled up at the foot of the bed, leaning against the wall and hugging her knees. Her pair of eyes were all red. Her eyelashes were stained with a patch of moisture. The little girl looked especially fragile at this moment. She was after all just a young lady in her teens. Being treated like this by her own father and sister. How could she walk out so easily? Qing Luo. Miao Yi raised her head and looked at her with red eyes. I am obviously the direct bloodline of the Miao tribe. My venom is obviously not any worse than Miao Rongrong. Why did he never put me in his eyes? Miao Yi couldn't understand. Her so-called father had plotted and schemed to kill her. He wanted her to give up her seat to Miao Rongrong. Her so-called elder sister had treated her as an enemy from the very beginning. For the sake of kinship, she had given everything to Miao Rongrong. But in the end, the result was that the father and daughter had conspired to kill her. Today, he saw Miao Yixiong get the D-Zun for Miao Rongrong. Miao Yixiong didn't hesitate to use the ancestors' forbidden technique to deal with Yiqing Luo. Moreover, when she appeared in front of him after escaping from death, what she got was not her father's concern. It was Miao Yixiong who was filled with rage. He should have given up hope long ago. However, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Yiqing Luo opened her arms wide as she smiled warmly. Since they don't want you, then love yourself well and bring out your best self, to make him regret that he didn't choose you back then. Miao Yi looked at Yiqing Luo for some time. He threw himself into her arms. The little person seemed to have finally found someone to rely on. Her tears quickly dyed Yiqing Luo's clothes. Yiqing Luo comforted her gently. From today onwards, no matter if it's Miao Yixiong or Miao Rongrong, their existence represents a joke. Now, it's time for you to prop up the Miao Gu family. Chapter 2665. You think I'm joking? Yiqing Luo tapped her forehead. Where's the lofty aspiration from before? Where's the self-confidence that you can do better than them? Miao Yi's little hands curled up nervously. I haven't received any special training, I'm afraid As long as you have the heart for the Miao Gu family, you can do anything well. Yiqing Luo was like a big sister as she comforted her gently. I've spared their lives, don't tell me. Don't you want them to regret how they treated you? Miao Yi's eyes lit up slightly. The ancient Gu worm is willing to form a contract with you, that proves your ability. Don't the Miao Gu family's sacred lady mainly choose the ancient Gu worm? Yiqing Luo slowly shifted Miao Yi's body away. She lowered her head as her charming eyes looked at Miao Yi. Think about Grandpa Bu and Grandma Bu who died, and those people in the Bu family village, don't tell me. You don't want to protect them. Miao Yi's body suddenly stiffened. Her beautiful eyes flickered. 1 month later, I'll hand Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong over to you. You just have to think of what to do. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly, not forcing her to make a choice now. In Miao Yixiong's courtyard. Miao Yi's hot-blooded confidence. It was all triggered by Miao Yixiong's cruelty and the disappointment towards him. Now, I need your help on one more matter. Yiqing Luo looked at the direction of the tightly shut room door, thinking of that man, like a loyal dog, standing obediently at the door. She couldn't help but smile. Miao Yi looked over in puzzlement. Other than the tightly shut room door, there was nothing else. You want me to accompany you to the West Continent, to help your friend suppress the goo poison? Miao Yi retracted her gaze as she asked. This matter, let's talk about it 1 month later. Yiqing Luo shook her head. It's Ah Xian, he's affected by the love goo and he's not normal now. And he's also poisoned by the centrifugal goo. I'm worried something will happen. Overlord isn't unaffected by the goo poison, how could he? Miao Yi was stunned. Yiqing Luo's expression sunk slightly. His identity is special, this matter cannot be known to others. Miao Yi's expression turned serious as well. The venerable Dizun was poisoned by the love curse and the centrifugal curse. Is he only affected by the love curse? Yiqing Luo nodded as she narrated Dmo Xian's current situation in a concise and comprehensive manner. Miao Yi's expression became more and more solemn. Maybe the Dizun's body is different from ordinary people, and the goo worms affect him, but he can still retain some of his consciousness. After a pause, she frowned. If the love goo affects Sir Dizun, then the centrifugal goo will definitely do the same. This is going to be troublesome. Do you have any ideas? Since it's the ancestors' forbidden venomous spell, your Miao tribe's ancestors' side would definitely have a way to counter it, right? Yiqing Luo's heart jolted as she asked anxiously. Miao Yi muttered to herself for a moment as she raised her eyes and met Yiqing Luo's charming eyes seriously. Qing Luo, I will take part in the Sacred Maiden selection 1 month later, to become the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. As long as I become the Sacred Maiden, I will be able to enter the Sacred Maiden Pavilion. Over there are all the Miao tribe's venomous spells for the past few hundred years. I will definitely find a way to counter the venomous spell for the Overlord. If it was before, she still had some resistance towards the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. Then now. For Yiqing Luo, for the Overlord. She must become the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. Chapter 2666. Miao Yi lowered her head dejectedly. Only the Sanus Pavilion can find a way to cure the goo. I don't know any other way. Different situations call for different measures. As long as there's a way, we'll just wait. Yiqing Luo patted Miao Yi's shoulder lightly. Ah Xian is waiting for me at the entrance. If he continues to stay, he might not be able to hold it in. I'll go out and accompany him first. Miao Yi immediately slid off the bed. Yiqing Luo walked to the door and suddenly turned her head around, smiling at her. Now you have the motivation to struggle. For me, you must work hard to become the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. Yiqing Luo said the last, in a very mischievous manner. Miao Yi's originally grave expression immediately broke into a smile. Yes. I will work hard. Yiqing Luo pushed open the room door and was thinking about how to appease her Ah Xian. However, when his gaze fell on the door of the room, she was stunned. Where was that tall figure that she had made Dmo Xian stand at? Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo immediately opened her mouth and walked out of the courtyard in quick steps. Wasn't the current Dmo Xian very attached to her? Why did he obediently wait for her at the door again? Did something happen to Ah Xian? This thought made Yiqing Luo's heart thump hard. The speed of his feet had also increased. When he rushed to the courtyard, Yan Xiao Yi and the rest were still sitting there. All of them had an indescribably strange expression on their faces. Yiqing Luo didn't think too much about it as her gaze fell onto the familiar figure standing beside Gui Wu. His heart, which was hanging in the air, was finally at ease. Fortunately, he was fine. Ah Xian, why didn't you wait for me? She smiled and flew towards Dmo Xian, opening her arms and circling around his waist. Qing Luo, wait. Someone wanted to say something. Yiqing Luo had yet to feel the man's warmth. Her shoulders were suddenly pressed down by someone. Then, with a strong tug, she was pulled away. Ah Xian! Yiqing Luo hissed. The force on her shoulder was so strong that her face turned pale from the pain. Impudent! A cold voice floated down from above. The man's cold and indifferent gaze swept past Yiqing Luo coldly. Who are you? How dare you call this lord's name directly? Yiqing Luo's body suddenly stiffened. She suddenly raised her head, her charming eyes staring at the man in front of her. It was still the same peerless face. He still had that godlike temperament. But his aura and everything about him were different. Especially that pair of peach blossom eyes that were usually filled with tenderness and affection when he looked at her. At this moment, it was extremely cruel and evil. His peach blossom eyes were still glittering to the point of being extremely bewitching. His expression was as cold as ice. From head to toe, he exuded the noble and powerful aura that only belonged to him, the venerable emperor. When he looked at her, his eyes were filled with unfamiliarity. Yiqing Luo's heart twitched violently. What's going on? She looked at Gue Wu, her heart aching. Such a gaze, she couldn't stand it, centrifugal goo. Gue Wu lightly spat out these 3 words. Centrifugal force goo, is the venom of centrifugal force acting up? This is the centrifugal goo. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. Looking at Dmo Xian's face, her face flushed red. She pursed her pink lips, her voice was slightly hoarse. So, he doesn't remember me, right? Venerable Overlord loves you so much, he will definitely remember. Yan Xiao Yi, who was standing by the side, opened her mouth carefully. Chapter 2667. Don't remember. The icy cold voice was emotionless. Dmo Xian lowered his eyes as he looked at the elegant young lady in front of him as his lips curled into a cold intent. Woman, do you think this will attract the attention of this lord? He grabbed her shoulder tightly and was about to throw her out. This lord hates women like you the most. Overlord. The surrounding people were shocked by Dmo Xian's action as they broke out in cold sweat. Yan Xiao Yi and Xiao Jin couldn't be bothered about the cold and overbearing overlord in front of them. They directly pounced towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Afraid that Dmo Xian would really throw Yiqing Luo out. But just as Dmo Xian was about to throw the woman who didn't know what's good for her, Dmo Xian's body suddenly froze. His eyes stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. His brows creased slightly. Why? He actually couldn't bear to do it. His heart felt as though it was pricked by a needle. Overlord, you. Don't be rash, don't be rash. Dmo Xian's daze allowed Yan Xiao Yi to successfully pull Yiqing Luo out from his hands. Yan Xiao Yi blocked Yiqing Luo behind her as she gave a flattering smile. Dmo Xian didn't even look at Yan Xiao Yi. Instead, he went past Yan Xiao Yi and shot straight towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't move. She stood behind Yan Xiao Yi in a daze. Her charming eyes looked at Dmo Xian's obviously familiar but at the same time emitted an unfamiliar aura. Her Xian. Just half an hour ago, he was still filled with tender feelings towards her. But now, he had become so cold. Xian. Her voice was a little hoarse as she looked at Dmo Xian's emotionless eyes. Qing Luo, don't open your mouth. He has forgotten about you now, perhaps he might really make a move on you. Xiao Jin pulled her along as he quickly walked behind Gue Wu. With Gue Wu around, Dmo Xian would at least give Gue Wu some face. He glanced sideways at the deathly still Yiqing Luo and immediately looked towards Dmo Xian. He's been poisoned by the love worm, you've seen for yourself how he treats the cat. he himself can't control himself. He won't make a move on me. Even until now, Yiqing Luo still firmly believed in Dmo Xian. Earlier, Dmo Xian was obviously going to throw her out. But in the end, he stopped. Even though he was affected by the centrifugal goo. Even if he forgot everything about her. But in the end, he still loved her. Did you ask about the method to cure the goo? Gue Wu raised his head and asked in a light voice. 1 month later, Saint Maiden Pavilion. Yiqing Luo stared at the direction of Dmo Xian and replied. 1 month. Gue Wu muttered, before suddenly snorting, can you tolerate him treating you like this, 1 month? No. Yiqing Luo replied decisively as she clenched her fists tightly, I will not let him be like this forever. She would rather Dmo Xian be like the previous dog-type pet, with a strong possessive desire towards her. She also didn't wish for Dmo Xian's eyes to lose her existence. Yan Xiaoyi, move aside. On seeing Yiqing Luo's pair of dimmed eyes, Dmo Xian felt an indescribable frustration in his heart. He did not like this feeling at all. He did not like the feeling of his emotions being affected by a stranger. Who was she? Why did it make him feel so strongly? He must find out about this woman's origins. Dmo Xian pushed Yan Xiaoyi aside as he walked towards Yiqing Luo in big strides. Xiaoyi. The moment Xiao Jin saw Yan Xiaoyi being pushed to the side, he immediately rushed forward and supported Yan Xiaoyi. Chapter 2668. Icy cold gaze. No warmth in his tone. Yiqing Luo's heart was throbbing in pain. His 5 fingers, which were hanging by his side, gradually curled up. She looked straight into Dmo Xian's eyes. Her charming eyes were filled with emotions. Dmo Xian frowned even tighter when he saw this. He quickened his pace and walked towards Yiqing Luo. The surrounding people looked at each other in dismay. But they saw Gue Wu, who had been sitting, suddenly stood up. Gue Wu, who had been sitting, suddenly stood up. Gue Wu stood up at the right time. Coincidentally, he blocked in front of Dmo Xian. His body completely shielded Yiqing Luo behind his back. Gue Wu's expression was still calm. Overlord, I advise you to restrain your emotions, lest you do something that you will regret. Dmo Xian's footsteps paused slightly. His peach blossom eyes squinted slightly, flickering with a gloomy luster. Why? Even Master Gue Wu and this group of people think that I have lost my memory. His voice was very low, revealing a trace of hoarseness, as if he was fooling around. I don't know. When did Master Gue Wu become so worldly, trying to shove a woman beside me? Gue Wu's face was still calm as he looked into Dmo Xian's eyes. If you think so, then so be it. Dmo Xian pursed his thin lips. He naturally knew Gue Wu's character. He also understood that Gue Wu would not speak up for a woman without any reason. This woman. What was her identity? Why did it seem that everyone in this courtyard was very familiar with her? Moreover, the way she looked at him. It always made him feel like being pricked by a needle. Get out of my way. Dmo Xian's eyes sunk. Gue Wu's expressionless face changed slightly. He frowned and was about to open his mouth. Behind him, a young lady's tranquil voice came. Master Gue Wu, don't worry. I believe, no matter what he turns into, he will never hurt me. As the young lady spoke, she slowly walked out from behind Gue Wu. She approached Dmo Xian. Extremely close. Almost with both feet, touching his toes. The young lady slightly raised her head, as long as she tiptoed, as long as he lowered his head. Their lips were so close that they could touch each other. Their breaths entwined with each other. Dmo Xian frowned deeply, not used to being so close to others. He wanted to move his feet back. But when he smelled the fragrance on the woman's body, his body was stiff, unable to move. There was an indescribable feeling of irritation in his heart. The fragrance of the young girl lingered in his nostrils. The more he thought about it, the more strange emotions surged in his heart. Suddenly, his body trembled. His heart ached as if it had been bitten by something. Ah, Xian, you. How did you? Yiqing Luo noticed that Dmo Xian was in a daze for a moment, her pupils constricted as she raised her hand to cover his face. Paw! Dmo Xian slapped her arm away. A pair of flickering purple eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. Get lost. Don't touch me. His body was trembling incessantly. It was as if he was suppressing some kind of pain. Yiqing Luo held onto her arm, which was already swollen from the slap, as she took a few steps back. The way Dmo Xian looked at her, it was filled with killing intent. Yes, it was the kind of killing intent that wanted to kill her. Yiqing Luo's breathing tightened as her face turned pale. Qing Luo. The few people beside her, when they saw this scene, all had their hearts in their mouths. Miao Yi heard the commotion outside and dashed out. On seeing Dmo Xian's abnormality, and Yiqing Luo's painful and unbelievable look. Chapter 2669. Yiqing Luo was pushed aside by Miao Yi. Miao Yi panted heavily as she held onto Yiqing Luo's arm and pulled her to one side. Overlord is affected by the centrifugal force Gu. The centrifugal force Gu will cause the Overlord to be estranged from you, hate you. Or even more, want to kill you. Until they were 10 steps away from Dmo Xian. Miao Yi then stopped in her tracks as she looked at Dmo Xian vigilantly and continued, the closer you get to him, his heart and body's love and instinct towards you will activate the centrifugal force Gu, making him want to kill you even more. Yiqing Luo looked at Dmo Xian in a daze. Her mind was filled with Miao Yi's sentence, want to kill you. He would kill her. He really would kill her. Ancestors' forbidden Gu art has been passed down till today. If the Overlord were to forcefully fight with the Gu worm because of you, it would cause a huge damage to his body. Miao Yi saw Yiqing Luo's absent-minded look and immediately straightened her head as she said solemnly, Qing Luo, don't agitate the Overlord first. When I become the sacred maiden, I will think of ways to cure the Overlord. Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened once again. She slowly closed her eyes as though she had used all the energy in her body to suppress the pain in her heart. After some time, she spoke out hoarsely, all right. For Xian's body. In order not to agitate Xian. It was just a month's time, at most, in order to avoid Dmo Xian and use that cold gaze to look at her. She would go and cultivate for a month. Using cultivation to numb herself. Using cultivation to forget Dmo Xian for a month. Don't forget, the Overlord still has the love Gu in his body. Miao Yi unceremoniously cut off Yiqing Luo's plan, you are the object of his attachment, you must not be more than 100 miles away from him, otherwise the love Gu in his body will be agitated. F****k. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but cursed. She clenched her fists angrily, what you mean is, not only do I have to endure his supercilious looks and his cold indifference, I also have to follow him all the time. Miao Yi was shocked by Yiqing Luo's valiant voice, You have Master Gue Wu to protect you, the Overlord will not specially make a move on you. Yiqing Luo's expression was gloomy as her charming eyes stared fixedly at Dmo Xian's direction. She looked into that pair of indifferent and disgusted eyes. Yiqing Luo's hands were already clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. All right. I'll follow him. Yiqing Luo stared at that peerless face as she gritted her teeth and said that she had already thought about it in her heart, after Dmo Xian was cured of the goo, how she would seek revenge for all the grievances she had suffered in this 1 month. Dmo Xian, who was standing in front of Gue Wu, saw that Yiqing Luo and Miao Yi were still chatting about something, as his expression turned increasingly gloomy. The lines on his cold face were cold and hard. His gloomy eyes swept over the two women. His gaze finally fell onto Yiqing Luo. "I'll say it one last time. You, come here." He raised his hand and pointed at Yiqing Luo. This group of people really believed that Gue Wu was here. Did that mean he didn't dare to touch them? One by one, both of them were challenging his authority. Dmo Xian's inky eyes surged with a dark and gloomy storm, like a whirlpool, one after another. Yiqing Luo clenched her fingers tightly. Miao Yi shook her head at her. But Dmo Xian's words were irresistible. She had already forgotten about her Dmo Xian. Chapter 2670. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she remembered what Miao Yi said earlier. She took a deep breath and walked towards Dmo Xian. Suddenly, there was a hubbub from outside the courtyard. Following that, she saw 20 to 30 forces who were staying at Qin Yu sect, about 50 over people, walking in from outside the courtyard. Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted as she frowned slightly, staring at the bunch of people who had fake smiles on their faces. In her mind, 4 words suddenly appeared, they came with ill intentions. This group of people indeed did not come with good intentions. Moreover, their target was clear and direct. After their gazes swept past Yiqing Luo, they all turned to look at Dmo Xian. One of the powerhouses in the Northern Waves continent, Qing family's patriarch smiled as he bowed to Dmo Xian, Overlord. Following that, he cupped his fists towards Gue Wu, Master Gue Wu. The other 10 over people did the same. Gue Wu frowned as he stood up impatiently and left directly. He didn't give any face to these powerhouses' representatives. No one was annoyed. They were long used to Gue Wu's character. Anyway, their target wasn't Gue Wu. "Overlord, I heard that you went to the Miao tribe leader's courtyard and almost fell into his trap. Fortunately, Overlord's strength is extraordinary and you saw through the Miao tribe leader's tricks. Instead, the Miao tribe leader was devoured by his goo insect." Finishing his words, Qing family's patriarch carefully looked at Dmo Xian's expression as he plucked up his courage and asked, "Overlord shouldn't have fallen into the Miao clan leader's trap, right?" This question made Yiqing Luo's heart thump fiercely. These people were probably here to test if Dmo Xian had been poisoned by the Miao clan's goo worm. Chu Wu Axayan had really spread the news of Dmo Xian being poisoned by the love goo worm. Otherwise, why would these people have the guts to test him? She immediately raised her eyes and looked at Dmo Xian. Now, Dmo Xian had lost all his memories regarding her. Then, regarding Miao Yi Xiong and Miao Rongrong's matters. Did he still remember? These people, when they asked if Dmo Xian's answer was slightly wrong, it would make this group of astute monkey-like representatives to detect some clues. Yiqing Luo wanted to interrupt. However, he was interrupted by a cold voice. "I'm fine." The cold words were filled with majesty. There was something called an aura spreading out in the surroundings. For no reason, more than 50 people felt a chill run down their spines. The Qing family's patriarch swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The immense pressure was so great that he couldn't even stand steadily. However, he recalled the words that person had whispered in his ear. If he didn't follow that person's arrangements and push forward this drama, he absolutely wouldn't be able to live. At this moment, no matter how scared the Qing family patriarch was, he had to summon up his courage and continue to ask, "Overlord, it's better to let the elders of the Miao tribe examine you. You are a noble person. If something happens to you in the northern continent and this news spreads out, how will the people of the northern continent behave? An ice-cold gaze instantly fell on the head of the Qing family. The head of the Qing clan shuddered, and his legs almost turned to jelly. We are just concerned about your health. Dmo Xian suddenly laughed. His thin, rosy lips curled into a cold, murderous arc. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes looked even more devilish at this moment. But it made one's heart turn cold. Laughing so hard that the Qing family patriarch couldn't withstand this pressure. With a plop, he knelt down. Chapter 2671. Dmo Xian, Qing family's patriarch, and the rest turned pale and broke out in cold sweat. How dare a puny Miao Yixiong scheme against me? Dmo Xian raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. Do you think that I haven't appeared in Nirvana realm for a long time and you can overturn the heavens? All the representatives had no more confidence at this moment. Qing family's patriarch was so scared that he almost cried out, Dmo Xian, I'm stupid. I didn't mean it, I was just worried about Dmo Xian. I shouldn't have speculated about Dmo Xian's body. I know I'm wrong. Dmo Xian curled his devilish eyes and sneered, I'm not interested to know whether it was intentional or not, but you made me feel very unhappy. The last 5 words. He spat them out almost word by word. It was like a voice from hell demanding for their lives. The representatives of the various superpowers were so shocked that they found it difficult to even breathe. Thump, thump, instantly, all the people kneeled on the ground. Dmo Xian was indeed unhappy. From head to toe, it was obvious that he was unhappy. He still wanted to catch that woman who made his emotions restless, if that woman could really affect his emotions. Then he would kill her directly to get rid of any future troubles. This group of people actually came to disturb him. Dmo Xian's eyes suddenly turned fierce and he swept his sleeves. Immediately, a powerful and majestic profound qi turned into a hurricane and in a split second, it had directly struck Qing family's patriarch. Qing family's patriarch let out a scream and flew out. The terrifying profound qi brought along a bone-piercing chill. The aftershock overturned the surrounding people who were kneeling down. Those people were scared out of their wits and knelt on the ground, kowtowing fiercely. Dmo Xian's palm was powerful, but it didn't directly take Qing family's patriarch's life. Just that, Qing family's patriarch, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Qing family's patriarch spat out a mouthful of blood. His internal organs were churning with a fishy sweetness and sharp pain. He stared at Dmo Xian in disbelief. I'm the patriarch of Qing family. If you kill me, Qing family, Northern Waves continent, will not let you off. His words made the faces of the representatives of the surrounding forces that had followed him turn even paler. They hurriedly kept their distance from the Qing family. Could it be that the head of the Qing family had been beaten senseless? How dare he speak to the overlord in such a tone? Lord Dizun even dared to destroy the Northern Wave royal family and the Battle King's residence. Why would I be afraid of a small Qing family? Before coming, the representatives of these forces were indeed hoping for a fluke. If the overlord was really poisoned, they seized the opportunity to take the Dizun hostage and take away his power. But now, everyone could see that the overlord who had such a strong aura, how could he have been poisoned? It's all that damn Qing family's patriarch's fault. He had instigated them to cause trouble for His Majesty. Everyone cursed Qing family's patriarch 100 times in their hearts. They couldn't wait for Dmo Xian to flatten the Qing family. And then, let them off. I'm very curious. If I kill you, what will the northern waves continent do? Won't they let me off? Dmo Xian smiled coldly. Immediately, he waved his palm again. That palm turned into a horrifying airwave. It fell straight on Qing family's patriarch's chest. Qing family's patriarch didn't even have time to scream. Chapter 2672. Even the representatives who were used to seeing bloodshed couldn't suppress the fear in their hearts. They were afraid that the next moment, the person who turned into minced meat would be them. That's right. The person in front of them. He was rumored to be a temperamental, decisive legend. The Overlord. In this Nirvana realm, no one could resist the Overlord if he wanted to kill anyone. What was wrong with their brains? They actually followed Qing family's patriarch to test the Overlord. Whether he was poisoned by the Miao tribe's venom. Such a powerful Overlord, how did he look like someone who was poisoned? The group of people knelt together as they trembled in fear, begging for Dmo Xian's forgiveness. Suddenly, one of the representatives saw someone from the corner of his eyes. His eyes lit up as he crawled towards that direction. Miss Yi. Miss Yi, I beg you to persuade the Overlord. We know we're wrong, we shouldn't be blinded by greed, everything is Qing family's patriarch's fault. When one of them knelt down and begged Yi Qing Luo. When the others saw this, they seemed to have found the only way out as they swarmed towards Yi Qing Luo. Miss Yi. I beg you to persuade the Overlord, as long as you speak, the Overlord will let us off. Even if we have to work like cows or horses, we will repay Miss Ye's kindness. These people were very clear. How much did the Overlord dote on Yi Luo? It was said that a lady's heart was the softest. As long as Yi Luo was willing to speak for them, the Overlord would definitely let them off for Yi Luo. Everyone treated Yi Qing Luo as their only hope. But no one noticed Yi Qing Luo's slightly pale face. Yi Qing Luo looked at the group of people in front of her as she resisted the urge to kick them all out. But at the same time, she couldn't help but to sneak a peek at Dmo Xian. The current Dmo Xian. He couldn't remember who she was. This group of people were begging her for help. If Dmo Xian made her lose her face on the spot, then he would draw a clear line between them. If this was spread out, she was already tired of being played with by the Overlord and was abandoned. This bit of gossip to her didn't matter at all. This was considered as the best outcome. But if someone with ulterior motives found out, then the consequences would be severe. How would Dmo Xian choose? It had been a long time since Yi Qing Luo was this anxious. But even after a long while, Dmo Xian did not open his mouth. He just used that pair of indifferent peach blossom eyes to stare at her unblinkingly. It was as if he wanted to see through her shell and into her soul. The voices of the representatives of the various factions pleading for leniency kept ringing in his ears. Yi Qing Luo pressed the area between her eyebrows, which was throbbing in pain as she took a deep breath. Her charming eyes flickered with a calm glint as her voice remained calm. There's no use in begging me. You should be very clear that the Overlord's decision will not change because of anyone. When the last word fell, Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers unconsciously curled up a little. Miss Yi, you're different, you're different. The Overlord dotes on you so much. As long as you ask, he will definitely let us go. This was the only way for them to survive. These people naturally wouldn't give up just because of Yi Qing Luo's rejection. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips pursed as she opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. If it was a normal day, she might as well send them flying with a kick. She couldn't be bothered to listen to their pleas for help. But now it concerned Dmo Xian. Chapter 2673. Yiqing Luo was still thinking of the best countermeasure in her mind. Suddenly, there was a sound of cold air being sucked in from the surrounding. Yiqing Luo was stunned and seemed to have thought of something as she turned her head sideways. Sure enough, she saw a noble man dressed in a flowing purple robe walking over gracefully. As the man walked, the purple robe swayed with an overbearing pressure. It made the various powerhouses representatives who were kneeling around Yiqing Luo started to crawl to one side, opening up a path. The man's footsteps were slow and heavy. He walked all the way to Yiqing Luo before he stopped. The familiar and elegant sandalwood scent seeped into Yiqing Luo's nose. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly tightened. You. Her pink lips moved slightly as she nervously pursed them. Her enchanting eyes fell on the man's body without blinking. He suddenly walked over. What did he mean? Not allowing Yiqing Luo to think too much, her shoulder was suddenly hooked firmly by a strong and powerful arm. Following that, Yiqing Luo was pulled into a warm and broad embrace. The man's sandalwood scent assaulted her nostrils. It made Yiqing Luo's heart palpitate non-stop. Beside her ear, the man's voice seemed to be soaked in wine. As long as you say it, I will definitely let them off. He laughed softly. His laughter was filled with infinite ridicule. Yiqing Luo's heart, which was beating faster because of his embrace, at this moment, returned to peace. Her petite body stiffened slightly as she raised her head from his embrace. She met with that pair of peach blossom eyes which were filled with foolishness. 4 pairs of eyes met. Dmo Xian's arms suddenly increased the strength as he tightened his grip on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. His voice became even lower. Why? Never thought that your lies to the outside world would be exposed in front of me. Yiqing Luo was stunned. He thought that this group of people would plead with her and persuade him. Just because she deliberately didn't have any bottom line and announced to the outside world that their relationship wasn't shallow. She obviously knew that he didn't remember her, which was why he did this. But Yiqing Luo's heart would still feel a throbbing pain which made her legs go weak for a moment. Dmo Xian's hand tightened around her, putting all of Yiqing Luo's weight on his body. What followed was his mocking laughter by her ear. What? Feeling guilty? Yiqing Luo's complexion paled by a few shades. The crowd by the side only saw the intimate interaction between Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo. How could she feel that the atmosphere between the two of them was completely different from the sweet love they used to have? They felt that they had asked the right person. Immediately, all of them started to beg Yiqing Luo once again. Dmo Xian didn't even bother to look at them as his gaze was locked onto Yiqing Luo's face. His black pupils flashed with a gloomy light. Bit by bit, it flickered. This face, compared to the women who had tried to seduce him in the past, he was definitely not good-looking. However, it had an indescribable attraction to him. It made him do things that even he himself couldn't believe. For example, now, walking to her side and hugging her in his embrace. Miss Yi, I'm begging you, please help us plead for leniency. We will do our best to repay you. This time Qing family's matter, we will also join hands to settle it and not let the overlord be affected at all. Those people were desperately begging for help. This was their only chance. They all wanted to live on. Chapter 2674. Not to let Dmo Xian be affected at all. Which meant they would join hands and push the blame of Qing family's patriarch's death onto herself. This was the best-case scenario. The current Dmo Xian was being corroded by the centrifugal worm. They didn't know if the centrifugal worm would cause Dmo Xian to have any other strange reactions. If Qing family really wanted to find Dmo Xian for Qing family's patriarch's death, the risk was too huge. It was hard to guarantee that Dmo Xian wouldn't be detected. She clenched her fingers but didn't shift her gaze away as she looked at him. Silence. The strange atmosphere lingered between the two of them. Everyone had finally recovered some rationality from the fear of death. They had also finally sensed the strange atmosphere. Momentarily, they all shut their mouths. Although they didn't speak. But their peripheral vision would occasionally glance at Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo. They were all guessing in their hearts. This Yi Luo. The overlord had threatened to pamper her till she was out of control. Could it be that she quarreled with the overlord? Just as everyone was wondering if they should go and beg the overlord for help, a voice suddenly rang out. They saw the overlord suddenly hooking his arm around Yiqing Luo's slender waist as a teasing smile surfaced on his peerless face. If Lil Luo personally pleads for you, I will naturally let you off. Not knowing why. The moment he saw Yiqing Luo, he wanted to call her name. Lil Luo, these 3 words, blurted out. But it didn't hinder him from continuing to act according to this young lady's script. When the 3 words Lil Luo, came out from Dmo Xian's mouth, Yiqing Luo's pupil subconsciously constricted. He still knew to call her Lil Luo. The man met Yiqing Luo's astonished gaze as his thin lips curled upwards. He was still smiling evilly. His slender fingers lifted the young lady's chin. He bent his head and got close to her. His voice was bewitching and alluring. After all, you are this lord's beloved woman. He intentionally emphasized the word beloved. Others couldn't tell. But Yiqing Luo absolutely could tell. He was mocking her. Mocking her for overestimating herself. Yiqing Luo's fingers trembled. Then she lowered her head, avoiding Dmo Xian's oppressive gaze as she moved her lips, and, then I'll take it that you've let them off. This group of people had little to do with her. But after all, they were the representatives of the major powers from all over the world. If all of them died in Dmo Xian's hands. Even if they were afraid of Dmo Xian's strength. Dmo Xian's actions had incurred the wrath of the masses. It would more or less affect Dmo Xian. Before Miao Yi found a way to cure the goo, she could not allow Dmo Xian to appear in front of the public. Especially in front of those forces that had a grudge against the imperial palace. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo didn't even bother to take a look at Dmo Xian, but instead pulled away the hand that was wrapped around her waist. She looked at the people kneeling on the ground and said indifferently, still not going to scram? Everyone was stunned as they quickly looked at Dmo Xian. When they realized that Dmo Xian wasn't even looking at them. One by one, they crawled up from the ground and ran out of the courtyard. Remember, Qing family's matter has nothing to do with the overlord, otherwise. Yiqing Luo didn't finish her sentence, but the threat in her tone was obvious. Yes, yes. Miss Yi, we absolutely don't dare. Don't dare. Chapter 2675. Yiqing Luo calmly turned around and raised her eyes to look at Dmo Xian. Her lips curled into a sweet smile. That's natural, after all, I'm your beloved woman. Dmo Xian's brows sunk suddenly. That mouth of his was quite sharp. She actually used the same words to block his words. His gaze went past Yiqing Luo, looking at those fleeing figures. A murderous intent flashed past his eyes. He didn't like the feeling of being controlled by others. Especially when it was controlled by this young lady who made him feel different. She wanted him to let those people go. Then he would not let them go. An evil smile overflowed from Dmo Xian's brows. He raised his hand and profound chi expanded, turning into billowing air waves as it shot out, just at this moment. A soft little hand suddenly pressed down on his arm. That hand was as soft as a ball of cotton. It looked like it had no strength at all. However, she forcefully pushed his hand back. The sudden surge of terrifying profound energy was actually suppressed by this little hand for no reason. Dmo Xian's entire body froze. His eyes were gloomy and his expression was getting colder and colder. From the corner of his eyes, he looked at his suppressed hand. Damn it! Who on earth was this young lady? How dare she provoke his prestige time and time again? Did she really treat herself as his beloved concubine? For this lord. Dmo Xian, who had just spat out these 3 words, had no chance to continue. His lips were ruthlessly sealed by a pair of warm lips. Yiqing Luo's one hand pressed on Dmo Xian's hand. The other hand hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck. Tiptoeing, bit by bit, she kissed him in the way that Dmo Xian once kissed her. The young lady's sweetness and fragrance made Dmo Xian unable to react in time to push her away. On the contrary, he felt a trace of a very familiar smell. So familiar that, in his mind, a faint silhouette appeared. As if before this, he had once kissed a lady so intimately. That silhouette gradually became clearer. Vaguely, he seemed to see a devastatingly beautiful face. Oh! Suddenly, Dmo Xian felt a sharp pain in his heart. The images in his mind suddenly dispersed. He suddenly pushed the girl in front of him away. His tall body staggered back a few steps. He stared at Yiqing Luo, as though he was looking at another person through Yiqing Luo. His body could not help but tremble. Ripples of light surged in his black peach blossom eyes, like tumbling whirlpools. Wave after wave, it was unstoppable. He tried to recall the outline he had just remembered. But the more he thought about it, his heart ached even more. This kind of pain was not physical pain. Instead, it was a soul-tearing pain. His body seemed to be unable to control itself. Xian. After Yiqing Luo was pushed away, looking at Dmo Xian in front of her, her heart felt as though it was being strangled by something unbearably tight. Qing Luo, come back. Miao Yi grabbed hold of Yiqing Luo's hand in time. The centrifugal venom is fighting with his consciousness. It should be that kiss of yours earlier which made his memories of you return. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted, even a breath made her heart ache. Then what should we do? The Overlord's willpower will absolutely be able to withstand the centrifugal venom, don't worry. When Miao Yi said this sentence, she actually had no confidence in her heart towards the ancestors' forbidden venom. She didn't understand much. Chapter 2676. Yiqing Luo's heart wrenched. Especially when she saw Dmo Xian's red eyes, his facial features were slightly distorted due to the pain. Her heart skipped a beat. She had used up all her energy. Then she suppressed herself and rushed towards Dmo Xian. She knew that the closer she got to Dmo Xian, it would only cause him more pain. Through the centrifugal worm, I am even more certain that the Overlord's love for you is really. Miao Yi looked at Dmo Xian and struggled for a long time, unable to find an adjective. Finally, she spat out 4 words, no one can compare to him. Yes, no one could compare to him. No one could compare to Dmo Xian's love for Yiqing Luo. The centrifugal worm not only makes the Overlord forget about you, but also makes him more and more distant from you, and even has murderous intent towards you. And until now, although he is very cold towards you, but his subconscious, his body, even his soul, are all uncontrollably in love with you. Miao Yi sighed as she looked at Yiqing Luo. If it was anyone else, like me, or any other woman in this courtyard, who dared to use his name to show off, dare to get close to him, dare to touch him, would definitely be dismembered by the overlord. Without hesitation. Miao Yi's words were definitely not a casual comforting remark. It was the real truth. The overlord would absolutely not allow any woman to get close to him. Even Feng Ling, who was once spread by numerous people in Nirvana realm to be the future mistress of the imperial palace, was not allowed to get too close to Dmo Xian. Even if she got close, that was on account of the imperial palace's granny. It could be said. Over a Dmo Xian who had forgotten about Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo was the first, so daring, to touch him, and even molest him as a stranger. Obviously, he would have a strong murderous intent towards Yiqing Luo. But it was because of Dmo Xian's love. Forcefully suppressed those murderous intents. This was enough to show how deep Dmo Xian's love for Yiqing Luo was. Og. Og. Suddenly, Dmo Xian's pupils contracted. One hand clutching his heart, his body fell backwards, and just like that, he fell straight down. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo was horrified by what she saw, as a feeling of needles piercing densely into her heart, spreading to her limbs and bones. She couldn't hold back any longer. She shook off Miao Yi's hand and flew forward. Ah Xian. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo hugged Dmo Xian's head with one hand as she looked at his extremely pale complexion, as her eyes turned red. Dmo Xian shut his eyes and between his brows, there were several layers of wrinkles. Clearly, even though he had fainted, he was still suffering. Ah Xian what's the matter with him? Yiqing Luo speedily turned her head around and looked at Miao Yi. Miao Yi was also shocked by Dmo Xian's sudden fainting. Meeting with Yiqing Luo's pair of eyes which were filled with worry, he stammered, maybe it's because of resisting against the centrifugal force goo, exhausting all his energy. He'll be fine after a short rest. Yiqing Luo held Dmo Xian's hand tightly as she looked at Dmo Xian. Her reddened eyes turned even redder. Send the overlord back to his room to rest. Suddenly, a calm and deep voice was heard, revealing an unquestionable pressure. It was Ghost Marshal. Chapter 2677. Yiqing Luo was stunned as her gaze swiftly swept to the side. Sensing that the courtyard had already been sealed off by the Ghost Marshal's sex spirit formation, the Ghost Marshal's sex spirit formation started to tremble. Only then did she react. Master Gue Wu, thank you. Yiqing Luo took a look at Qiao Jin, carry him back to the room. Just now, the people from those forces had indeed fled very quickly. However, this did not mean that no one would be crowding around the courtyard, looking around. If not for the Ghost Marshal technique spirit formation, which had covered up everything that had happened in the courtyard, the Ghost Marshal technique would not have been able to see it. Just like the atmosphere between Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo earlier, Dmo Xian had already fainted. It would definitely set off a wave in the Nirvana realm. With the help of Qiao Jin. Very quickly, they returned to Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo's room. Everyone could tell that earlier the battle between Dmo Xian and the centrifugal force worm had already made Yiqing Luo extremely worried. Naturally, he would not disturb the two of them. The two of them left the room one by one. The unconscious Dmo Xian was restless. To be more precise, he was still fighting against the goo worm in his body while he was unconscious. Yiqing Luo's heart ached incomparably, as she had been busy taking care of and comforting Dmo Xian by his bedside. It was until the hour of the yin, which was about 3 or 4 in the morning, when she laid down on the side of the bed, holding on to Dmo Xian's hand, and fell into a deep sleep. In a daze. She felt cold. But soon, his body seemed to be dragged up by something. She tried to open her eyes. However, the heaviness of her eyelids and the familiar scent of sandalwood made her unable to raise her guard. Warmth covered her. In an instant, her entire body felt cold. After an unknown period of time. When Yiqing Luo woke up, it was already bright outside. The piercing light made her raise her hand to rub her eyes. But when he moved, only then did he realize that he couldn't move his hand at all. It wasn't just the hands. Her entire body was wrapped in the embrace of a burning hot, muscular body. The elegant sandalwood fragrance lingered in the air. She blinked her charming eyes and raised her head in a daze, only to see the sleeping face that was as handsome as a god. Ah, Xian! Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly. Yesterday, she had accompanied Dmo Xian back to his room, and it was only until the wee hours before she fell asleep. She still remembered. He was just lying on the edge of the bed, pretending to be asleep. Why was it that at this moment, she was on the bed, and was even encircled in Dmo Xian's arms? When did her vigilance and perception become so weak? Looking at the still unconscious Dmo Xian, the image in her mind was of him looking at her with a cold and indifferent gaze. She stayed in Ah Xian's arms. Wouldn't that make the centrifugal goo even more violent? Ah Xian had fought against the centrifugal goo for so long. You must be very tired. He could not let him continue to waste his energy. Yiqing Luo's breathing tightened. She immediately and carefully removed the hands around her waist and was about to get up. However, the hand on her waist suddenly tightened its grip. She abruptly fell back onto the soft bed. Her little face bumped into the man's hard chest. Little Luo, the hoarse voice of the man who had just regained consciousness was transmitted into Yiqing Luo's ears. This cry soothed Yiqing Luo's body almost went soft. The man bent his waist slightly as he tightened his grip on the person in his arms. His warm breath sprayed onto her exposed skin. He even panted slightly, Little Luo, don't move. As his words left his mouth. Chapter 2678. Yiqing Luo's delicate body suddenly trembled. The familiar gentleness and the affectionate kiss from the man made her momentarily forget to struggle. Ah Xian, she gasped and called out his name in disbelief. Little Luo, I'm here. His low and hoarse voice murmured indistinctly. Yiqing Luo's trembling intensified. Dmo Xian's voice at this moment had really. She was unable to control herself. Oh, Dmo Xian seemed to be following his instinct, trying to ease the discomfort in his body after he opened his eyes. His hand instinctively locked onto Yiqing Luo's petite body. Until the man's large palm touched a certain spot. Yiqing Luo, who was still in a daze, suddenly widened her eyes and panted, pushing away the man's pressing chest. Ah Xian. You, calm down. The current Dmo Xian. Clearly, he had switched back to the love goo in his body. A pair of aggrieved eyes, like those of a large puppy, looked at her pitifully. That pair of peach blossom eyes were currently tinged with some sort of emotion. He looked exceptionally demonic. It was extremely enchanting. He could force a young girl from a good family to turn into a wolf in a matter of minutes. Yiqing Luo swallowed a mouthful of saliva and forcibly suppressed the urge to be teased by the man. Ah Xian, you've just woken up, I'll get someone to fetch water, you can take a bath. No. Dmo Xian's hoarse voice carried a hint of coquettishness. He covered Yiqing Luo once again. His hands encircled her, as if his body could only feel a trace of comfort when he touched Yiqing Luo's delicate body. However, this was not enough. It was far from enough. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo increased her strength as she pushed him. In Dmo Xian's body, there was not only one kind of love goo poison. What if she couldn't control herself and was unable to extricate herself from Dmo Xian's charm? Dmo Xian was knocked down. After activating the venom of centrifugal force, wouldn't Dmo Xian suffer again? At this critical juncture, he absolutely had to hold on. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes and hardened her heart, avoiding the temptation of Dmo Xian's beauty. Lil Luo, don't push me. I'm uncomfortable. Want Lil Luo, Dmo Xian's hoarse voice sounded aggrieved, as he kept on muttering softly. Yiqing Luo forcefully pried his hand away. I'll feel better after the bath. When men woke up early in the morning, they would indeed have that kind of impulse. Especially like the current Dmo Xian, the only thing on his mind was her. Naturally, he would not be able to restrain himself. Lil Luo, The man's voice was even more aggrieved, like the low whine of a puppy. Yiqing Luo's heart softened, but thinking of the centrifugal venom in his body, she could only harden her heart. Be good, I'll help you wash, you'll feel better after washing. Finishing her words, she did not wait for Dmo Xian to continue acting coquettishly. Yiqing Luo didn't even want to look anymore. She murmured, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Stay calm. Calm down. At the same time, he shouted towards the outside, get a few buckets of cold water. Very quickly, Qiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi carried several buckets of cold water. Seeing Yiqing Luo's messy hair and messy clothes, he looked at her ambiguously, as though he had been through the same thing before. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she blocked the entrance, not letting their line of sight into the room. Following that, she lifted a bucket of water, as her lips curled into a cold smile. Early in the morning and the two of you are here so quickly, could it be that Jin Zi can't do it? Saying that, she even used her eyes to glance at Qiao Jin. Who can't do it? Qiao Jin's eyes instantly widened, as he was so angry that he clenched his teeth to refute. But the person in front of him was a young lady. Chapter 2679. If that's the case, why are you still squatting in the corner of Xian and me so early in the morning? Yiqing Luo shot a glance at Qiao Jin, looking at Qiao Jin who was so angry that his face was flushed red. She had been suppressing the feeling of not being able to pounce on a certain evildoer, and finally felt great. Yan Xiaoyi also blushed. No matter how much she blabbered out, she couldn't be like Yiqing Luo, putting such matters at the tip of her tongue. Yiqing Luo was really vengeful. Even teasing her would result in retaliation. Yan Xiaoyi expressed that they could no longer be friends happily. After a long while, he finally said, We were worried about you. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she listened to the man on the bed who had his mouth shut but his breathing was getting heavier and heavier. He no longer had the mood to tease Yan Xiaoyi and Qiao Jin. He simply explained, he fought with the centrifugal goo for an entire night and sweated a lot. Now, he looks like he was poisoned by the love goo. I have to help him wipe his sweat. Just like this. Yan Xiaoyi squinted her beautiful eyes as she sized up the messy Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't answer but curled her lips into a brilliant smile. Not getting lost now, are you trying to sneak a peek at my Xian's tight abs? Yan Xiaoyi. How would she dare to imagine the overlord's abs? You're being too careless with your blackening. Qiao Jin widened his eyes. His eyes passed through Yiqing Luo and looked into the room. Then he looked at Yan Xiaoyi, who had a stiff expression. His mind was filled with the image of the overlord's outstanding charm. Qiao Jin's expression instantly darkened. He hooked Yan Xiaoyi with one arm and directly carried her in his arms, walking back. You want to see my abs? Let's go. Let's go back to the room, I'll let you see all you want. Yen Xiao E. F***ck. Slut Jean, are you a person who can be incited so easily? Sending off this pair of happy lovers, Yiqing Luo carried the cold water bucket by bucket into the room. Only then did he close the door and lock it. She placed the bathtub down and poured a bucket of water into it. On the other side of the bed, a heavy object fell to the ground with a thud. The bucket in Yiqing Luo's hand fell onto the ground. She looked back quickly. Sure enough, she saw Dmo Xian squatting beside the bed. There was a faint blush on that peerless and devilish face. His black hair was scattered over his shoulders, giving him a somewhat messy and demonic feeling. His purple robe hung loosely on his body. The waist seal was nowhere to be found. He struggled to get up from the ground. He moved. His purple robe fluttered. A large part of his chest was revealed. He could vaguely see the perfect mermaid lines. Yiqing Luo's heart pounded furiously. That restless feeling in his heart. He began to clamor for her sanity again. A monster. An absolute monster. Wasn't he afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself and would pounce on him? Was it really okay to test her patience like this? Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and muttered, "Emptiness is form, form is emptiness," as she strode towards Dmo Xian. "Ah Xian, are you hurt anywhere?" Lil Luo, Dmo Xian seemed to have finally sensed an aura that made him feel at ease, as a sliver of a smile surfaced on that thin red devilish face of Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo just got closer. Her wrist was grabbed by the man with great force. She fiercely rubbed into his arms. A warm and urgent kiss quickly fell on her body. Lil Luo, don't leave me, I feel terrible. Dmo Xian was like a dog-type pet that had fallen out of favor, as he whimpered aggrievedly. Chapter 2680. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's face flushed red as she held on to Dmo Xian's hand. "Let's go, you will feel better soon." Dmo Xian threw a tantrum and refused to leave. Yiqing Luo half coaxed and half dragged and finally brought Dmo Xian to the side of the bathtub. As for herself, during this process, he was only left with a thin layer of clothing. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and pointed to the bathtub. "Ah Xian, go in, I'll help you bathe." The man who couldn't bear to leave Yiqing Luo's soft skin let out a few whimpers from his nose. Yiqing Luo coaxed in a low voice, "Be good, trust me, if you don't want to feel uncomfortable then go in." Dmo Xian unwillingly lifted his leg and stepped into the bathtub. Yiqing Luo immediately stretched out her hand and carelessly tore off the robe hanging on his body. His muscles were taut, and his body was so perfect that it made one's heart beat faster. Completely exposed in front of Yiqing Luo's eyes. Yiqing Luo felt that right now. Her eyes were absolutely radiating a wolf's light. She felt extremely wronged. This man clearly belonged to her. But it was right before their eyes. He could only watch, but he couldn't go overboard, it was too torturous. In order to suppress the burning flame in his heart, Yiqing Luo lifted another bucket of water and poured it onto Dmo Xian's body. Dmo Xian stood in the bathtub. Droplets of water slid down along his perfect mermaid line. Lil Luo, I still feel terrible. After Dmo Xian was splashed with water, he didn't feel any relief like what Yiqing Luo had imagined. On the contrary, it seemed to be on the rise. Yiqing Luo poured several buckets of cold water onto Dmo Xian's body. Then he pressed Dmo Xian down into the bathtub. He soaked in the cold water until it was almost hot. Dmo Xian still had no intention of easing up. If this went on, Dmo Xian might suffocate to death, right? Yiqing Luo lowered her head as she looked at her own hands and then at Dmo Xian's flush red face. A thin layer of sweat rolled down from his forehead. He was poisoned by the love goo. He did not know how to control himself at all. Especially when he looked at Yiqing Luo. Other than hugging Yiqing Luo and kissing her, he followed his instincts. He couldn't think of anything. He could not hope for Dmo Xian to suppress himself. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes and put her hand into the bathtub. Ah Xian, be good, don't move. By the time Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo walked out of the room, it was already 2 hours later. Everyone was still sitting at the stone tables and chairs in the courtyard. Yen Xiao Yi and Xiao Jin were not here. Miao Yi and the others saw the two of them coming out. Dmo Xian stared intently at Yiqing Luo, as though there was no room for anyone else in his eyes, which made everyone understand. The current Dmo Xian. It was Dmo Xian who had been poisoned by the love worm. The crowd heaved a sigh of relief. Yiqing Luo walked over. Xian's venom is too chaotic. If he continues to stay in the Qinhua clan, there will be too many mouths and it will be easy to be discovered. The others nodded in agreement. Yiqing Luo looked at Gue Wu. I'm going to stay at the Peach Blossom restaurant. Peach's place is extremely secretive, as long as the centrifugal venom doesn't cause any mischief, and calmly wait for a month. There should be no problem. Master Gue Wu, do you want to join us? Before Gue Wu could say anything, Zhou Mo, who was standing by the side, suddenly pounded the table. Of course I want to join you. Little Wild Cat insists on following you, so of course I want to go. Gue Wu. Yiqing Luo nodded, then it settled. I'll go look for Sect Master Yin to bid farewell, then contact Peach to arrange a room for you. Gue Wu. No one asked for his opinion. Yiqing Luo had already held on to Dmo Xian's arm as they walked out of the courtyard. Chapter 2681. As Yiqing Luo walked, she reminded Dmo Xian in a low voice. Reminding Dmo Xian to meet Yin Qinghao later. He only needed to maintain his aloofness as an overlord. Yin Qinghao was the patriarch of Qinyu clan, so he was definitely smarter and sharper than the average person. Just by looking at Qinyu clan's status in the northern continent, it was obvious. Especially when compared to when her scum father was still the patriarch of Three Springs sect. This further highlighted Yin Qinghao's intelligence. So Yiqing Luo didn't dare to belittle Yin Qinghao. She must prevent Yin Qinghao from detecting Dmo Xian's abnormality. Looking at the nearer and nearer hospital admission, she took a look at Dmo Xian, who was staring at her in a daze, without shifting his gaze away. Yiqing Luo sighed as she raised her hands and cupped Dmo Xian's face. She slowly tiptoed and got close to his ear. The servants and maids who were passing by saw this scene. They only felt that the scene of this golden couple displaying their affection in public was really beautiful. This society that only looked at faces. As long as they looked good. Even the public display of affection was so pleasing to the eye. Yiqing Luo laughed softly in his ear. Looking at the man's white neck, her long and narrow eyes, flowing light flashed. Ah Xian, obediently stand beside me. I don't let you speak, don't let you move, don't let you move, okay? Dmo Xian's arms suddenly hugged her tightly in his arms. His body was well built and his muscles were firm and extremely hot. Yiqing Luo's thoughts suddenly drifted to the scene of her bathing for Dmo Xian when she woke up today. Her cheeks blushed slightly. She raised her hand and was about to push away Dmo Xian's burning hot chest. The man's husky voice, with the taste of a puppy, rang softly. I'm obedient. Lil Luo wants to give me a reward. All right. Yiqing Luo smiled, her eyes curved as she tiptoed and touched his thin lips. But unexpectedly, the man whose eyes lit up when she kissed him, this time, after accepting her kiss, hugged her tightly again. After that, he looked at her seriously. The reward I want is the reward for Lil Luo, or helping me bathe today. Yi Qing Luo. It took her a lot of effort to erase those images. Now that he mentioned it again, was he doing it on purpose? Since when did her family's pet learn to be bad? Lil Luo, help me bathe, it's very comfortable, I want more. Dmo Xian continued, his peach blossom eyes overflowing with resplendent radiance, like stars. This made Yi Qing Luo totally unable to open her mouth to say any words of rejection. Dmo Xian's waist bent slightly as he lowered his body. That cold, peerless face was magnified in Yi Qing Luo's pupils at such a close distance. The dense kisses fell on her face bit by bit. Accompanied by the man's hoarse voice, if Lil Luo, doesn't give me a reward, I won't listen. Yi Qing Luo, didn't he say that he would be attached to her and listen to her after being poisoned by the love goo? Now he actually dared to turn the tables on her. Under the insistence of Dmo Xian, Yi Qing Luo was eventually defeated. Forget it. Helping him once is also helping him. Helping twice is still helping. Who asked this puppy to become like this because of her? Who asked this puppy to be the man she loved the most? She could only pamper him. But after his goo poison was cured, Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed past a cold glint. Humph, she must definitely get back at him. The two of them had already walked out of the hospital and saw Butlerine walking over. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.